Not all of us are going to be able to buy new whiskey releases from new distilleries. That's either because, they're not distributed where you are, or probably because there just aren't enough bottles to go around. It's typical these days for that to be the case. However, they're coming. These whiskies are not going to be around for just a single release. They're going to continue to make whiskey forever and a day, and they will get to the point that they eventually start to hang around on shelves. But the question tonight is not what whiskies we can get a hold of. It's with a much longer term view and the idea of which of these whiskies are interesting, which of these whiskies are good, but more importantly, this year of 2022, are they good value? I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the vPub. Welcome to another Thursday night. I hope you're all doing very well, and I hope you're sitting comfortably. I hope you've got a glass of something nice and amber-coloured in front of you too. Now, let me ask you, where is that from? Is that potentially a new whiskey? Are you getting on board with the theme tonight, or are you sitting there with your favourites? I wouldn't blame you if you were, because it's tricky to get a hold of these new whiskies. So let me just say at the outset, I understand fully. A lot of the things I'm going to be sharing with you guys aren't even distributed in your market yet. And even if they are, they're potentially in such small quantities.
I'm not sure I understand.
Thanks, Siri. Even if they were in your territory, they're likely to be in such small volumes that the chances of you getting your hand on them are going to be quite tricky. However, these whiskies are available now, and they're becoming more and more available all the time. The inaugural releases, the second, third batches, the ones that there's going to be a bit of a scrum for, we don't need to get involved in that. We can back off and wait until they become a wee bit more available. That's starting to happen now. So it's time to dedicate a vPub to new whiskies, new whiskey distilleries, not just in Scotland, and uncork a few that I've been saving for this very topic. But in the meantime, before I talk a wee bit more about that, I'm going to jump into the chat. We'll jump into the lounge here and YouTube. By the way, if you're watching on Facebook, thank you so much for picking it up. But all of the folk that I'm hanging out with here, the chat that I'm interacting with is in YouTube. We've got over 230 of you, and already just a couple of minutes in, fantastic. But apologies, that's the chat that I'm interacting with tonight. Welcome, everybody. If you're in the lounge here in YouTube, I'll jump in and say hello to some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. I wanted to pick up a Jimmy Legg comment I caught there just before I scrolled down. He said I was looking sharp tonight. Well, I'm struggling with the lighting just now. I mean, I'm pink generally. I'm just generally pink. I've always been pink. But it seems to be as soon as I put on a dark shirt, the lighting kind of... I'm not very good at that stuff. But thanks, Jimmy. I'll take the compliment regardless. Thank you, my friend. Good to see you. And Whiskey Throttle Daniel from Canada is here. Fantastic to see you. Don't make me send over the truckers and take all your whiskey. Aye, it's going to be tricky, especially for you in Canada. I know you're in the best place in Canada for availability, Daniel, Alberta. But I know that a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about tonight, buddy, has probably not made it anywhere close to you yet. But it will change in future. I'm pretty sure of that. Mike Molasses is in. Good to see you, Mike. Kevin Grant on Whiskey. Good to see you, Kevin. Kevin's going to be joining us for a wee game midstream of Is It a Speyside? So I'm looking forward to bringing Kevin on. He wasn't able to join us last week because his shift, he had to do overtime with the police. Nielsen Gupta is in. Good to see you, Neil. Gary Carew. Whiskey Novice. Good to see you. Rolf Ebbhead. Fantastic. Lucas Havel. That looks like a new name, Lucas. You're very welcome here. Good to have you in, my friend. Arnie Tiger, Disappear back again. Good to see you, Arnie. Good to see you, Disappear. Peated, it's good to see you, Disappear. Peated is here. Good to see you, Frank. Jimmy Jazz, fantastic, Jimmy. Wonderful to see you as always. Bruno Martins in Portugal. Whiskey with Molly. Ben, just up the road. Hellswood down in Milton Keynes. Danny Hebbington, fantastic, Danny. Good to see you. Captain Bamis, I never know how to pronounce that second name, if it's Bamis or Bamis or whatever. Just popping in to say hi. I'll catch it on the replay, St. Captain. Thanks very much for saying hello, and I hope you enjoy the replay, my friend. Okawame, fantastic. Prime Whiskey. Good to see you both. Whiskey Wings Mike, wonderful Mike. Not seen you in a wee while, my friend. It's good to see you back here. I hope you're keeping well. Jed Smith, Tom Champion or Campion. Tom Campion, maybe. Even at all, it's finally my first live vPub, having watched the replay for many months. Tom, it's wonderful to have caught you and welcome you into your first live vPub, my friend. Welcome. Matthias Mulder is here. Good to see you, Matthias. He's got a group question regarding the subject. Annandale portfolio bottlings for the next 10 years. A bottle costing €80 per bottle, different casting ages. Would you do it? €80 per bottle. So what's that, about £65? It's a big ask, isn't it? It's a big ask. Ryan Sutherland is saying, hey, Roy. Good to see you, Ryan. Philip McGill. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Philip. Whiskey Share Toby. Good to see you, Toby. Good to see you, Philip. Fantastic. Toby, I hope you're keeping well, my friend. Max Kreitner over in Austria. Fantastic, Max. Always wonderful to see you in. Hope you and Christina are doing very, very well. Sandy McDonald, good to see you, Sandy. He's saying just secured a bottle of White Peak Wireworks at a cost of £70. Oh, well, I'll share with you what I'm going to be uncorking this evening, Sandy. And spoiler, there may be a Wireworks in the mix. Jan-Paul van der Hoven is here. Fantastic, Jan-Paul. Good to see you. Gordon Fraser, good to see you, Gordon. Glennis Maid, somebody's bought me a dram as well. I think it might be Glennis. I don't want to miss that. He's saying, with the return of both Port Ellen and Rosebank, do you think the future releases will be even remotely available? Do you think they are a risk? Well, Port Ellen and Rosebank, we're hoping that they're going to make enough product for the availability to be there. But not only do I suspect, I also dearly hope that they're going to wait a long time for a mature spirit. They've got a real problem, right? They've got the problem of bringing new whiskey back onto the market that's obviously going to be difficult not to compare it to the legendary whiskey that's become very, very mature since the years that they've been closed. That Port Ellen, Rosebank, and of course Brora, who opened again last year. They've all been closed for decades. Port Ellen and Brora closed in 1983, and Rosebank just a few years after that. So, these whiskies have had time to really become legends in their own right. The one of the best lowland whiskies ever. If you ask anybody what the best lowland whiskey they've ever tried is, chances are they're going to say a mature Rosebank. The best Isla, there's a good chance that they might say, if they've had the ability to try an old Port Ellen, they're maybe going to mention it. And certainly when it comes to Highland whiskies with that lick of peat, there are some absolutely spectacular Broras out there. But we're not judging them in the same way, are we? Because the reason that they became legends was because of the mature product that was available, that sat around for a long, long time when it wasn't wanted. But we live in crazy times now. We really do. Falsgraf is here. Good to see you, Falsgraf. Always wonderful to welcome you in. Greg's Whiskey Guy. Good to see you, Greg. I hope you're keeping well. My friend Daniel Vermaas. Good to see you, Daniel. Fantastic to see you. Pekka Thor. That looks like a new name, Pekka. Wonderful to have you in. Fantastic to welcome you. Lots of new names I'm picking up. Fuzzbomb153, good to see you, Fuzzbomb. That looks like a new name. Whiskey Finn looks like a new name. It's really wonderful, and I appreciate all your support. It's great for you to be turning up week after week. The people in this lounge are, in my opinion, some of the best people in whiskey. So hopefully you're all finding yourself welcomed in a nice place. I'm going to apologise to everyone just now. I've been really busy recently, and it's meant that I've been quiet. I've not been active in the Barflies page on Facebook. I haven't even caught up with the comments from last week's Peat Fest vPub. I haven't put in the chapters or anything. And I made a New Year's resolution that I would put chapters and I would respond to every single comment. I will catch up, believe me, I will. But it's been really, really intense recently, and I want to kind of tease a wee bit the reason for that. Next week, I'm going to make an announcement and launch a thing that I've been working on. It's a team effort. It's an idea I had over a year ago. I kicked it around for a long time before I ever did anything about it. I just wanted to make sure it felt right. And eventually it felt right. I started to put my pitch out to the people that I wanted to involve in this thing. And I'm very, very fortunate that every one of them that I approached jumped on. So we've been very busy as a team over the last few weeks. In fact, since about November time, when the inertia kicked up last year. And it's very mature now, and it's ready to tell everybody about it next week. So I hope that you're able to join me next week. It's very focused towards us. It's very focused towards whiskey fans. And I hope it's something that everybody will enjoy and be able to embrace. Sorry, I can't tell you any more than that just now. I just want to make sure everything is perfect, or as close to perfect as possible. Let's say a minimum viable product, I think one of the team keeps referring to before we launch it. And then I'll share it with everyone next week. But it's meant that it's been super intense, 14-hour days for me, just playing around with things and trying to get things moving. And maybe not for the last weeks, but in the last week or so. So I've been out of it a wee bit. But still, the vPub goes on. The topics are ready for the vPub. I know what I'm going to be sharing with you on these sessions, and they remain sacrosanct. So even next week when that launch happens, I'll still be here hanging out with you all. Fantastic. Falscraft is saying now that is a plug. Well, no, it's not a plug yet. It's a tease. Everyone is suggesting that it's Bikini Babes and Whiskey, Roy. Aye, it's not that, Chris, Everwind. But if you know of such a thing, you might want to share a wee link. Glennis Maid is saying, please be an independent bottle. Glennis, no. I can probably say even less about that. Jaime is here. Good to see you, Jaime. Saying, are the barflies buying a cask or two? No, it's not that. It's a collaborative project. Don't tease me about it. Next week it should be ready to go, and I hope that you'll join me and hear what we want to share with you. Helen has given me a row as well for teasing. I'm sorry, Helen. Good to see you. Whiskey Novice Jim is saying, you are truly a tease, Roy. Good to see you in, Jim. I enjoyed joining you on Monday night. Jim wasn't able to join us for the Thursday night Peat Fest, but he had the samples in front of him, and him and I got together over on the Whiskey Novice channel, and we did a hangout with the same samples that Jim tried. Blind, he didn't know what they were. He didn't watch the vPub from last Thursday, but his take on it and his favourites, I think, followed a very interesting pattern. So you might want to nip over to the Whiskey Novice channel and give that a wee watch from Monday night if you want. Jim, it was a pleasure to hang out with you. Fantastic. Jimmy Jazz is saying, Aquavite, enough said, move on. Don McCausland is saying, we should leave Roy alone. He's starting to squirm. Jimmy's saying, I wasn't consulted. What's up with that? I know. There was a significant lick of imposter syndrome with this project, but I'm very much over that now, and I'm really just super excited to share it with you and get it out there. So please join me next week, and I'll tell you all about it, especially when I've got the approval and the rubber stamp from the team, because they need to be happy as well that it's ready to go. Let me tell you what I've got in the glass here. I've got a wee dram. Well, I'm not going to tell you what this one is, but it's a wee dram of one of my favourite new distilleries, and I'm suspicious that it's one of your favourite distilleries too. I like it a lot because it's different, it's unique, it's very flavourful, it's very rich. It's not an easy whiskey to recommend to everyone, but some of the batches that they've released, that people would be quite happy sitting back and enjoying. Some of the batches for me are quite compelling, and they draw me in, they suck me in. But the one I've been enjoying while I was getting ready for tonight is one that I've started to enjoy a bit more, and I suspect the reason is a lot to do with maturity. Jed Smith has suggested it's an Ardnamurchan. I've been enjoying a Whiskey Radar saying, don't give the secret away, beware of the Yoichi effect. That's right. There's nothing blind tonight. I'm going to share everything with you. But I tell you how I'm going to structure this tonight. I think the reason I'm enjoying this whiskey better is because their stocks are becoming more and more mature. This is a distillery that probably released its product before the hype around new distilleries was a big thing. And I think they're not alone in that. I think Annandale also suffer from that as well. Annandale being one of the most southern distilleries. The one in my glass right now is one of the most northern mainland distilleries. And I think that their reputation suffered a little bit from their first couple of releases being really quite raw and very young. And I think that there's been something that's happened from that that's meant a lot of people that were perhaps excited about this new whiskey when it came along were a wee bit disappointed and maybe didn't go back again. But I think it's time to go back to this distillery again, have a look at it. The Dram Experience is saying, thanks, Roy, for the great content every week. Thank you. Dram Experience, thank you very, very much for your nice words and your virtual dram. And also Glennis Maid, I don't think I raised a glass to say thank you for your dram as well, my friend. Cheers to you both. Thank you. This is a wee bit light, still quite sharp. There's a bit of citrus here, lemon, citrus, tart lemon, salty and briny. It's got a nice gritty peat to it. It says lightly peated on the bottle for this expression, but the peat's a wee bit heavier. I would say this is medium peat. I would say that there's even more peat smoke in this than perhaps a Bowmore. I would say that probably it's exaggerated because it's still a single-digit age statement. It's still quite young. But this is a bottle of Morven from Wolfburn. I'm not sure if Morven is still part of their core range. I think it is. But I paid about, I'm going to guess about 35, 37, 38 pounds, something like that for this bottle. There's no age statement on it. We don't know. But they do tell you that it's non-chill filtered. They put it out there at 46%. And they make a big statement about it being natural colour too. And it's nice and pale. Fantastic. We can trust this whiskey. And we know when they were founded. So we can work out the oldest whiskey in this is still going to be in the single digit age statements. I think Wolfburn was founded in, I want to say 2014, but it could be 2013. So maybe in the next year or so, they're maybe getting into the point that they're going to have a 10-year-old or something. So these guys have been around for a little while. And I think their price point for the 46% releases is interesting. What's more interesting, they've got a cask strength version out now, the Langskip, at £60. Now, cask strength, it's going to be 58, 59%. Typically, I think the Langskip is in the order of about 58%. So you're probably getting another quarter whiskey more, at least, maybe a bit more than that, because of the higher ABV, of course. So we don't mind paying a wee bit more for a cask strength version. So even their cask strength coming out at a fair £60 or less, I think that's fair pricing. But I wanted to know what you think. The Dram Experience, sorry, I picked up that. I've got another whiskey from my friend Jimmy. Thank you, Jimmy, saying, Doc and I have decided to allow this project of yours to go forward, even though our input was not asked for. You're welcome. I think what's key about this project, Jimmy, and I appreciate your tongue-in-cheek support, I really do, my friend, from you and Doc. The reason that I didn't consult anybody inside Patreon or anything is that this project is not going to have the Aquavitae brand anywhere near it. It might incidentally have some elements, but people should be able to look at this and say, oh, okay, this is a different thing. So it is different. You would maybe consider this a wee bit of diversification. I don't want to say too much, sorry. Stephen Toth is in as well. Good to see you, Stephen. And he's bought me a dram too. Good to hear you keep pushing the envelope on new endeavours. I think you're going to be quite surprised, Stephen. He said, keep bringing it and hope that 2022 is off to a good start for you and us barflies. I hope so. I really hope it is. I've been working hard for you, Stephen. But I do very much appreciate your dram, your generous dram, and Jimmy Legs dram too. Slange to you both. So that's me finished my wee Wolfburn. If you were put off by Wolfburn when you bought it 4 or 5 years ago, perhaps, maybe, it could have been 5 years ago when the first one came out. The Aurora, I think, was the first one I tried, and it was quite sharp and young, very spirity. Go back now. Maybe don't buy a bottle, not in my say-so, but if you're in a bar, if you see one, if you're in a whiskey club, if you're doing bottle split, if somebody's got a bottle and you're doing a sample swap, have you got a Wolfburn? This is getting better. And I think it's got a lot to do with them getting better at what they do, and they're maybe having access to more mature stocks. It just makes sense. And I also commend them for the price staying reasonable for most of the releases. Let's pop it here next to a couple other new distilleries that's been on the vPub recently, the Ailsa Bay. This is the Sweet Smoke release from Ailsa Bay. When we think about new distilleries, we forget about Ailsa Bay, don't we? Right? It was, I don't know when they came on stream at first time, about 2007 or something, but yeah, Ailsa Bay is a single malt distillery. I know it's part of the much, much bigger grain complex down there in Girvan owned by Grants, but Ailsa Bay is a malt distillery. So when we talk about new whiskies, we have to include them in the fold too. I've spoken about this whiskey on the vPub, and as recently, a couple of vPubs now, the 1770 has appeared, and I spoke about this as recently as last week. People quite like that whiskey, but I think the price is a problem, honestly. I still mention it, and I don't want to keep talking about it in the context of that 1770, but it's going to be a big part of our discussion tonight, absolutely. Gregor, time for a dram is in. Good to see you, Gregor. Falscraft is saying, now I'm intrigued. No matter what, I will have to watch next week's vPub. I know. And time for a dram, Gregor is saying, first of all, Roy is building a new dating app, but for whiskey, Tinder of the whiskey world. I'm joking, but now that I've written that, it could actually be a belter of an idea. We need more women in the enthusiast side of whiskey. I felt bad when I talked about everyone Chris's bikini babe statement there, because I felt conscious that I want to be careful about what I say, because I need everybody that joins the vPub to feel welcome. And we have a problem that whiskey is the engine that powers whiskey. There are as many women there as there are men. Behind the scenes in whiskey, it really is completely different from the enthusiast side. In my experience, this is just my opinion, there are lots of women out there, and there are more and more women coming into whiskey all the time. But I think we need to take active steps to let women understand that whiskey is a space that not only that they can enjoy, but they can flourish and thrive in. Women have a fantastic way of assessing whiskey and tempering environments and attitudes, and there aren't enough. If we need your app idea to work, Gregor McQueen, we need that to happen, and then you've got a fantastic business idea, my friend. Superb. Gary Carew is saying, bought the Glasgow 1770 after last week's vPub, and it blew me away in a good way. Wonderful stuff. So hopefully that was a peated one that you picked up. So it's the peated one. It's peat and sherry, Pete and Pedro Jimenez, and those two things just work really well together, don't they? Peated is saying, do you mean you should not look good in a bikini? Ah, I like the way you think, Frank. Yes, that was my assumption, wasn't it? I don't know how I look in a bikini. Perhaps I should try it, my friend. Anyway, I'm going to ask you all a question, and then I'm going to show you the results of a poll that I put out on YouTube. I'm enjoying these polls. I've used them in 2 or 3 vPubs now. But let me just ask a question, and I'll try and grab the chat just now, right? Out of all the new distilleries that you've heard of in the last 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years or whatever releasing product, what is the distillery that you feel gives the best, based on actually you trying it or what you hear in the chatter, both are relevant if you've not been able to try it, that bring the best value bang for buck? What's the most available, it seems? What's the stuff that people are able to try most, that's priced fairly, that people are going crazy about? What is the new whiskey? Where would you pin that flag in the landscape? Lawrence Bors has got a good one. He's saying Cotswolds. Absolutely. We've talked about it. It was even mentioned in the Oswas last year. It got a mention, and it deserves it thoroughly. I've raved about Cotswolds. It's great whiskey, despite its youth, and it's fantastic value as well. Ebhead, Ardnamurchan, Malt Brother Ray, Ardnamurchan, Howard Foster, Ardnamurchan, Mark Slinger, Ardnamurchan. Marty Wong has got another good world whiskey as well, talking about High Coast. Love it. I've also tried a couple of Smogan, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it well, but my goodness, talk about densely flavoured. Peaty, absolutely, but really interesting. Danny Hebbington, Ardnamurchan. Jesperson, it looks like Jesperson. I wonder if that's just Jesper. I think I know you. I think we just chatted. Ardnamurchan, Jonathan and Lawrence, again saying Cotswolds. Bruno Martins, Ardnamurchan. Whiskey Radar McNean, absolutely. David Keogh, Ardnamurchan. Matt Kay, Cotswolds. Robert Rutherford Rassey. Highland Hamish, Ardnamurchan. Cresimere, good to see you, and my friend Cresimere is also suggesting Cotswolds. The Dram Experience, Ardnamurchan. Whiskey Shared, Cotswolds. Geordie V, Cotswolds. Hellswood, Ardnamurchan, Standard. What was that, Helen? It just jumped. Lots and lots of comments coming in. It's going to be hard for me to keep up here. My goodness, wonderful. Helen, I've lost your comment completely. Ardnamurchan standard release for us. So the standard 46% releases. Ardnamurchan from Malt Minion, Whiskey Games Ardnamurchan, Andrew Pierce Ardnamurchan, people talking about Nickney and Lindores, Dingle, lots of other new ones coming in as well. But you just look at that chat, so many people talking about Ardnamurchan, and that's what's in my glass. And of course, I've got a theory about this that I want to share with you. Not to get off topic, says DC, but do you have a peated whiskey that you only pour on special occasions? For me, it's Ardbeg Dark Cove. I can understand that's wonderful. I never owned a bottle of it, DC, but it was wonderful whiskey, and I enjoyed that Ardbeg release very, very much. I can see why people love it. So a peated whiskey that I pour on special occasions, I've got a couple of really quite old ones that are getting a bit low. And it's not that they're peaty, it's just that they're beautiful whiskies, because when you get to a good age, the peat is really muted. It's part of the thing rather than the thing. But I would say that I have a Lagavulin 20-year-old down there that I am particularly precious about. And I think it's not the best Lagavulin, but for me, there is something in it that takes me to the Lagavulin warehouse. And for that reason alone, it's kind of a wee kind of special isolated moment for me. Whiskey Reaper bought me a wee dram as well. Whiskey Reaper, thank you very much. That looks like a new name. No comment, but you're welcome here, and thanks for your virtual dram. And thanks to you, DC, as well. Cheers. Has to be Ardnamurchan, says Graham Fraser. Listen, let me tell you my theory about why it has to be Ardnamurchan. Timing, philosophy, attitude, and perhaps a bit of serendipity. Ardnamurchan came along at a time that we were ready for, and new distilleries had a buzz about them. This concept of new distilleries, you know, Kilchoman had been very successful, Arran had been successful, Kilkerran's been very successful. Many new distilleries had come on board and got this concept across that new flavours, new experiences from new distilleries were interesting because they were not being built to provide filler for blends. They were not built to be as efficient as possible and dial into a very specific flavour profile and churn it out time after time after time. These were much more kind of craft orientated, much more kind of maverick, much more independent, much more focused. And all of the releases were, of course, designed to be as good as they could be, as interesting, well-flavoured single malts. Ardnamurchan, the timing was pretty perfect for them. But also, we waited about 5 years before we got what I've got in the glass tonight. This is their inaugural release, or it's not actually the inaugural. I think we'd be better off calling this the 09-2001. So 09 for September 2020 and 01 being the first for that year for 2020. I think that's how their structure works. It's a wee bit confusing, and I can't imagine that they'll be hanging on to it for too long. You never know, though. For me, this was amazing to try as a new whiskey, because all the new whiskies that I tried up until this point was all about try to dial out the sharpness, try to dial out the raw nature, try to dial out the spirit. Because these are all naturally presented, the spirit is very on display at 46% ABV as a minimum. So you're kind of getting a lot of sharpness and things, and you tend to be reaching for water. And a lot of the fruit flavors and things tend to be coming from, they're not kind of fruit that's going to be enhanced or created by the cask. A lot of the fruit flavors are going to be the fruit that's from the spirit, which is great, but they've not had time to kind of settle. They're quite tart and sharp and often a wee bit aggressive at times. New Spirit is, there are a lot of people out there that absolutely adore New Spirit, and I often enjoy a youthful whiskey, I really do. But for me, leaving it a wee bit longer, like Ardnamurchan did, just to get to 5 years, and then blend the best kind of more or less selection that they could pull together for these releases, meant that their reception was very, very positive indeed. Their philosophy is also on point. Their philosophy about production, about trying to make it as good as they can. I'm talking about the way they handle the grain. I'm talking about mashing. I'm talking about fermentation. I'm talking about distillation, the whole thing. And then I'm talking about the casks. I'm talking about the investment. I'm talking about the long-term strategy. Everything is good. And that weaves nicely into their pricing as well. Now, I'll admit Ardnamurchan single casks are expensive. They are expensive. But they're expensive because they're in demand. They don't gather a speck of dust ever. They're just gone as soon as they appear. It's very difficult to get your hands on an Ardnamurchan single cask, so I can understand that the price point is up at £80 or £90, whatever it is. I have one. I've managed to buy one. And I've not really been trying, honestly, but I know it's going to be a scrum, so I just back off. The one that I bought was the Good Spirits Company one. It's my local retailer, so at least I had a chance with that. But their core releases are £45. The first one I ever bought in 2020 was 45. The three that I've bought since, 45, 45, and 45. In fact, they've brought so many batches out in order to try and increase their penetration into the market as much as possible, that they are now starting to see that stocks are lasting on the shelf. Do not perceive that as a drop in demand. That's them matching the demand and keeping the price at £45. If I hear anybody talking to me about, people are kind of going off Ardnamurchan now, it's easy to buy it, it's this. What do you want? Do you want whiskey that you can't buy it for a stupid price? Or do you want whiskey that you can buy for a fair price? Because if we're going to judge whiskey based on we can't buy it, that means that it must be expensive or it should be expensive. This is wrong. What Ardnamurchan are putting themselves in a position to do is increase their export markets. Because once they've satisfied their existing markets that the stock can actually stick on the shelf for a wee bit, then they can play fair. And it means they can expand their market and put the whiskey in more places. Can I remind you that they've kept it at £45, despite us beating each other up to get our hands on the stuff? So I'm serious when I talk about philosophy, because I've been talking about charging what the market will stand for weeks now on the vPub, and that's what we're seeing. I know I'm talking about new whiskies, new distilleries tonight, but I'm hopefully going to make a point this evening and round it off nicely and differentiate the people who have fair philosophies, who's in it for the long term, and people who have cynical philosophies who are in it for profit. There's nothing wrong with either of those avenues, those paths. These are businesses and they can go any way they want, but I know which one I want to follow as an enthusiast. The Pious Priest, interesting name, fantastic, good to see you in. Well said, Aquaviti Scotch needs to avoid what happened to the bourbon market here in the States. The allocation games are stupid. There are lots of dynamics that we cannot avoid because it's down to what the buyer will pay. And are you going to judge that buyer? If they're sitting on more money than we have, they're just going to buy what they want. And that's just the way life is. So kind of shooting the guy who's buying and making a profit, or shooting the girl who's got the more money, or just poking fun at various places just because you can't get a hold of the whiskey. We're all part of the problem. We really are. I'm very much part of the problem. So the whiskey is not ours. And sometimes we've got to fight to get it. Sometimes we've got to pay to get it. But it's always a choice. Anyway, it's nice to see you, my friend. It's nice to welcome you here. It's a new name. DC's bought me another dram to say, does Scottish or Irish distilleries offer barrel picks to groups similar to the American distilleries' barrel pick programs? No, that is very much an American thing. They're very precious about the stocks here. We don't get that access. Unfortunately, we just don't. It works very, very differently here in Scotland. If you can get access to a warehouse in Scotland to pick casks, well, you're connected. That's all I can say, DC, but thanks for the dram and good question. So I'm going to hold Ardnamurchan as our benchmark tonight, and let me show you why. Let me bring up a screen share here. This is the poll that I put out on YouTube, and I found this to be interesting and very in line with my own thoughts. There were no real surprises here. But if I share this with you, I've asked everybody in the YouTube community. When I took this screenshot, it was at 677 votes. It's a wee bit higher than that now, but the ratios are still more or less the same. And I've asked, there are a lot of new whiskies out there from new distilleries. Considering these are new businesses and not yet the scale of larger, more established producers, what's the most you're comfortable paying for a new release? Bearing in mind it's typically going to be less than 5 years old. Now, I didn't want to overly complicate the question by asking about ABV strengths and things, but what I have done is, as I've put the price bands in this poll, this multiple choice poll, I've added the ABVs that I've found available on the market. So we start off at £20 to £29. The only one I could find that fits in there is the Aberfalls. But Aberfalls have chosen a strategy there to bring it down to 40%, so they're maybe looking at it as a gateway whiskey or the type of product that they can put in a supermarket or something. Not sure, but it's certainly made the product a bit cheaper. 30 to 39 pounds. We're in the territories where we can find Cotswolds at 46%, naturally presented, for 38 to 39 pounds. We've talked about it at length. If you see Cotswolds on the shelf, fancy buying a bottle at 38, 39 pounds, just buy it. Because even if it's not your favourite whiskey, it's potentially going to be something different, something new for you, and you will not be disappointed. Despite its youth, Cotswolds are fantastic for that price point. But look at the sweet spot here. 51%, over half the people responding have said, look, the most I'm willing to pay for a new distillery is 40 to 49 pounds. Now, in the question, I've framed it clearly. This is less than 5-year-old whiskey typically. Are you really willing to pay up to £50? Well, yeah, because probably we understand that they're not set up to the same scale as a super efficient distillery. They're not going to be able to make the whiskey for the same price points. We know that they're starting up with huge capital investment. We know that they've sat on their whiskey for years waiting for it to be ready. We know that they're keen to recoup some of those costs. We know that the smaller scale natural presentation is something that we're demanding, and we're actually willing to pay a wee bit more for it. But not too much. Look at what happens as soon as we go to 50 to 59 pounds. So in the 40 to 49, we had Ardnamurchan, Lindores, Kingsbarns, all sat in there nicely. They're hitting that sweet spot. As we go above, north of £50, we start to get a lot of people disgruntled, don't we? Only 12% are willing to go that far. And we're in the territory of Lochlea, Torravec, and Nicknean. Now, Nicknean came out cheaper. They would have made the band beforehand. But recently I've noticed that Nicknean's up £1 or £2 and have slipped into that upper band. Where you are, where you buy your whiskey, you might be able to pick up Nicknean less than £50, less than 49, and in that case, it slips back into the sweet spot again. Then we've got only 7% willing to pay up to the £60 to £70 price band, and that, unfortunately, is where we are finding the new releases from England, new releases from Ireland, Bimber, White Peak, Waterford, etc. That's when things are getting a wee bit salty. And I'm going to talk about some releases tonight. I'm going to talk about some whiskies, more than just Ardnamurchan, that reassures us that our judgment here is spot on. I know it's a business. I know that you can charge anything that you want for your whiskey, and you know what? We're still going to want to buy it. We're still going to want to try it. However, for those of us who are not fortunate enough to have plenty of money for it not to be a consideration, we're going to focus a wee bit more and try and discover where the value lies. Okay. So Ardnamurchan for me remains a sweet spot. Super wonderful, interesting whiskey. Everybody seems to love it. Honestly, it's difficult for me to find negativity about Ardnamurchan. And so much of it is because they're over-delivering for the price point. I really believe that. There's going to be a lot of similarities with another distillery I'm going to talk about at the end of the night tonight. So we use Ardnamurchan as our benchmark, and we uncork 4 whiskies. We're going to uncork the brand new, just out. I only got this, I picked this up. I need to remember when. It was maybe October, I think, last year. I have tried this. I don't have much of a memory or a recollection of it. I tried it with my friend Rolf, who's maybe in tonight still, Ebhead. I don't remember much about this. This is my bottle, so this is going to get uncorked. This has been sitting here for a long time for me to try. I've had this for, I could have had this for a year. And it's been waiting for this vPub to try it. This is the Lindores Abbey release. This is a standard 46% release. They use Roman numerals. I would love to tell you what I should have done my research, but it's MCDXCIV. If any of you are good at reading Roman numerals, you can help me out with that one. But it's a standard 46% release. This was actually a wee bit easier to get a hold of when I came to it. This did stick around for a wee bit longer, but even then it was measured by days rather than weeks. It went quite quickly. I've also got Lochlea, which is brand new. It came out on a Burns night, interestingly enough. and there is obviously a connection there. This bottle isn't my bottle. This is Sevi the Alchemist's bottle. But he's given it to me, and if he gets a second one, I get to just pay for this and keep it. He's just a starlet. He's just a very generous guy. I didn't get a Lochlea when it came out. I didn't get involved in the scrum, but Sevi was able to help me because I was interested for tonight's exercise to see how we'd got on with it. And we've also got, these are 3 Scotches, obviously, but I've also got an English whiskey here. This is from White Peak Distillery in Derbyshire, and this is their Wireworks Distillery. And I have to say, it's one of the most attractive bottles I've seen. But unfortunately for Wireworks, not that it's a talking point, actually, it's gone. It's evaporated. There's nothing available here now. If you've got this, well done you. But this is very tricky to get a hold of. A friend sent me this because he had a spare, so I bought it directly from him at retail price of £65. At £65, that's Bimber territory. That's getting close to Waterford territory. This is the expensive end of the market. But who am I to judge? Because it's sold. However, I'm an enthusiast. I've paid £65 for this, so I'm hoping that this gives me £65 worth of enjoyment. The Lochlea was 55. I think the Lochlea is 55. Lindores was a wee bit cheaper, sub 50. And the Clydeside was, I think, 45 as well, going from memory. So we're kind of in a similar price point for these 3, maybe with the Lochlea being the most expensive of the 3. So let's get the uncorking started. Listen, I know Jimmy Legg has made comments in the past. There's a few people have actually made comments just how many bottles I've been uncorking with the topics of the recent vPubs, the Sweet Spot, Peat Fest last week, and this week New Distilleries. Let me tell you that I think it's very important that whatever I uncork, I have bought with my own money. So even if that comes from Sevi, that's going to cost me the retail price. I'm going to pay for that. Any whiskey that I uncork, I have bought. Why is that important? Because when I judge the whiskey, price has got so much to do with it. I am not one of these people that can't just spend and not worry about price. And I have the impression and the feeling and the belief that all of you guys are the same. So when we drink these whiskies, we know that we're sipping a £50 whiskey, not a 3-year-old whiskey. There's a difference. The 3-year-old thing is incidental. How much it costs us to get into our home is the big thing. So this is Clydeside's 46% ABV Stop Cross. Okay, I'm going to leave it for a second because it is quite spirity on the nose immediately. If any of you get to do distillery tours ever, occasionally some of the distilleries will let you try new make. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to do. You might not love the taste of it. You might realize just how much of an impact wood maturation makes to whiskey. But I think it's very, very good to understand what flavors come from distillation, or let's say the production of the new make, and what flavors potentially come from wood. And you can do that when you contrast the new make to a mature spirit. But what it also does is it gives you a kind of a reference library of what the spirity elements are in a whiskey. Now, this is natural colour, and it tells me on the bottle that it's natural colour. I think it does, at least. Pretty sure it does. Yes, 46% natural colour and non-chill filtered. So well done, Clydeside, bringing us a natural product. However, if you look at when Clydeside came on stream, I think Clydeside would have been 2017. I'm pretty certain it's 2017. I've been making a note of these, but I've written it in such small writing. We know that if it's 2017, I think it was quite late in 2017 as well, we know that the oldest that this can be is in the order of maybe 4 years old at best. So actually, if they were to put an age statement on this, it would be 3. There would be a 3 on this. Potentially a 4, but more likely 3. So this is young whiskey. And it does smell young. The sweetness here is from spirit. It's a spirity sweetness. And it's a nice nose. There's also an oak sweetness here too. There's no peat or smoke or anything there. There's nothing particularly thick, heavy, or dense. I always look for fruit. One of the first things I look for is fruit. And if I find a fruit here, I'm probably in the territory of an unripe pear and some candied citrus peel. There's a wee bit of, I don't know what kind of spice that is, a wee kind of, like a white pepper maybe. But, you know, all of this, the experience, that everything here is exactly what you would be expecting from a young whiskey. Let's have a wee sip. Let's have a wee sip. Now, these are not reviews. Please understand, I do whiskey reviews outside at the recycled bin when I've sipped everything from a bottle. I've had a whole journey with a bottle. This is an uncorking. It's a very different thing. So the only thing you're going to get from me tonight with these uncorkings is a first impression. I hope that that's clear. Whiskey Share Toby is saying, these can be hard to get, Roy, but being part of a few clubs, there's normally someone splitting a bottle or two. I talk about it often, Toby, and I know that you're very fortunate to be in that environment. Wherever you are, get together as a group of people and you find that your resources are multiplied and you can get hold of great things. Let's have a wee sip. And this is the first time that I'm consciously drinking this because I was with friends and it was a social thing when we had this the last time. Everything I'm going to say to you, I think, is as expected. I wanted something to jump out, to take my attention. There are no obvious faults here, but there are no obvious kind of, ooh. The texture is exactly where you'd expect it to be, right in the middle. The spirit arrival is exactly where you would expect it to be. There is some rawness there, some youth there, but there's nothing off-putting or bad about it. But to somebody who's not used to drinking neat spirits, this would be very sharp. The finish is fairly short to medium, and it goes a wee bit bitter. Again, that experience that you would have with sipping a young spirit. The fruit is fairly muted, and it's more of a kind of spice experience. So you've got a kind of sweet, sugary thing happening that parades a little bit as fruit, and it goes to spice. So have another wee sip. That candied peel thing is there, but the fruit is if it's orchard fruit, it's kind of like white orchard fruit, unripe orchard fruit, but candied peel, sherbet, a bit of powdered sherbet. What's that fizzy powder, a candy? I don't know what you call it in the rest of the world. Quite a short finish. I mean, obviously I need to spend a wee bit more time with this, but this is just exactly as you would expect it to be, with nothing particularly standing out about it. I want Clydeside to be fantastic. I want Glasgow Distillery to be fantastic because guess what? I'm a Glaswegian and I want the whiskey making in Glasgow to be a huge success. I think the problem that we have, even if we're geeks and enthusiasts, when we're trying 3-year-old whiskey, what it's reminding us of in a lot of cases is very, very young whiskey that we've maybe tried for a very, very cheap price from a supermarket, because some of the flavors are the same. And what we've become used to as enthusiasts is very mature product, especially in the Scotch landscape, 10, 12 years and much, much higher. So to go to this, it's really, you're really having to try to have some kind of magical power to envision what it might taste like in the future. And that's almost impossible for me to do. Ardnamurchan, I've got a sense of where it might go, because there's lots of interesting things happening in Ardnamurchan. I can't explain why, but this is much more as expected, just right in the middle. I mean, they've done well making it drinkable, easy, third or fourth sip now, enjoyable even. The spirit starts to sit back a wee bit. We're getting a wee bit of limoncello now. So that kind of candied lemon peel, that sweet thing is kind of gone a wee bit like limoncello. Really like limoncello. That's incredible. Aye. Okay. It would be unfair to put any kind of scoring or anything on an uncorking. I'm not going to do that. But I do want to share my first impression with you. And I think that however we try and envisage where this might be in the future, it's just folly. What it is here just now, what you're buying into is a concept of a new distillery rather than what's in the bottle. You're buying to help, you're buying to support, you're buying to become a fan of, you're buying to celebrate the fact that this distillery exists in that place, because this whiskey is good whiskey, clearly good whiskey, no faults anywhere, but this whiskey is not 50 quid whiskey. I wish I remembered how much I paid for it. I think it was a bit less than that. I think it was 40. This is, honestly speaking, this is 30 quid whiskey. You know, drinking it blind. But it's a special thing. It's much more than what it can deliver at 3 years old. It's much more of a celebration, and I understand that completely. There's going to be a common theme tonight, I think. That's our Clydeside. I'll try and keep these in order so I can remember exactly what I'm drinking. And I'm just going to get straight into the next one, because it's been waiting long enough. I've not brought any water with me tonight. When I get my guest on, I'm going to use that as an excuse for him to hold the chat for a minute so I can run away and grab a glass of water. That's very amateurish. It's the first time I've ever forgotten a glass of water. It's vital that you don't forget your water. Oh, quite a muted pop. Whiskey Geek is saying, the galling thing about these prices is 70% of it goes to the tax man and retailers and distribution on top of that. Artificially inflates them, trying to turn a profit. Absolutely, Ben, you're spot on. So much of it is just pure tax. But the producer gets to fix. They decide what the price point is going to be, where they're going to enter the market. Greg is saying, my biggest concern about this topic is after the value question is when the distillery's new make is fantastic. Well, their first releases are disappointing because too much processed wood tech. I've noticed you talk a wee bit about that. You were talking about that on Twitter as well, Greg. But think about it. I mean, if you've got new young whiskey, you can distill it in a way in order to make it ready as quickly as it can be. Okay, there's things that you can do. But what you've actually got to do is you've got to use clever, active wood, and there's a skill in that in itself. Now, as us as whiskey enthusiasts, we might pick up and say, oh my goodness, I can taste this cask and that cask and super active and all the rest of it and jarring and with a spirit and it's not integrated and it's sitting on top of each other. And we can say all of these things. But honestly, all of those casks bring really rich, decent flavour hooks. And for a lot of people, that's enough. And the alternative is they just put out young whiskey. So I think there's a kind of argument for and against excessive or heavy use of active wood. For young whiskey, I don't see an alternative. Falscraft is saying right now I'm drinking some very good young Irish stuff that is 4 years young, and I love it. Youth is not a problem for me if it is good. That's right. That's right. Another thing Greg talked about interestingly about very good new make. I'll never ever forget a statement from Roddy 4 years ago now at the Glasgow Whisky Club that he's saying, yeah, I've tried a lot of nice new makes. I really have. It's interesting, he said, but I always find that the best malts are always made from really challenging and difficult to drink new makes. And some of the Springbank new make, I think Ardbeg new make was in there, things like Mortlach and lots of new makes that had been tried and discussed were really quite challenging as new makes. So it's not always, if you taste a really nice, easy to drink and enjoy sweet new make, which I have to say Clydeside is, they've been selling their new make for a long time. It doesn't necessarily follow that it's going to be a fantastic mature malt whiskey. For me, the clever example of using wood tech in a moderate way is Wolfburn, says Greg. I'm glad you're enjoying Wolfburn as well. I've come to enjoy it too, as I mentioned at the head of tonight. I have an answer to the question you asked in the title of this vPub, Jimmy Legg, and he's worth it is the question that's on the thumbnail. And Jimmy Legg is saying no. Malt Brother Ray is saying, just take my first sips of Lindores. Sorry, I'm not impressed. Characterless. I hope it's not COVID causing this. Wow, I hope it's not COVID for you either, Ray. Let me see. I suspect that because this is kind of Arran shaped, this kind of bullet shaped bottle, that it's not going to have a glug. Let's see. Oh no, it does still give us a wee glug, whereas the Arran, it just kind of slips out quietly. Trying to pour just wee tiny measures here. This Lindores is 46%. I do believe that they put on the label that it's natural colour and unchill filtered. I'm pretty sure they do. They could do with having it in bigger letters if they do, but I'm confident that it is absolutely the case. 46% ABV. But they tell us the cask type, bourbon, sherry, and wine barrique. Okay, this is remarkably similar on the nose to the Clydeside, but there's a bit of kind of again, it's sharp. The fruits are sharp, but it's not a kind of orchard apple pear thing. This is like a blackcurrant or a gooseberry or still a sharp tart fruit, but slightly sweeter. Unripe grape. Gooseberry. What's that? Quiet. So whenever you find that the whiskey is a bit muted, what I often do is I kind of just tilt the glass. I seal it with my hand, tilt it like this, and have the whiskey completely coat the glass, so the whole thing is coated, and then so maybe there's even a suggestion of a wee bit of red fruit or something now, not raspberry, but a kind of an unripe strawberry. But still quite quiet. And then you've got a wee bit of spirit on your hand as well. No, I'm not getting much from that either. Okay. Maybe I've got COVID, Ray, as well. Let's have a wee sip. Okay, much better. Much better. So this is remarkably soft, actually. I was worried that there was going to be a big, huge hit of sharp alcohol here, but it's soft. It's quite nice. I think the sherry cask is playing here. There is a nice wee bit of sherry roundness to this. There's a sweetness, a softer arrival, slightly longer finish as well. The palate is still, the texture is still right down the middle. You know, nothing particularly heavy. It's not full-bodied or oily. This is more of a fruit-driven thing as well, like the Clydeside. Longer finish, though. And I think that there's the nose was quiet, but it's a richer delivery. There's more more richness. And just having it on the palate is helping me to nose it a wee bit now as well. There's a wood spice, almost a dust, a cutwood type, warm, fragrant, aromatic wood spice. Maybe some nice caramelized sugar or brown sugar. Much softer. That's incredible. And I know that Ray wasn't enjoying this. When I see wine barrique, I'm kind of suspicious, but this is tempered. It's not very winey. I often, one of the problems for me in wine finishes and wine maturation is if I sit with it for too long, the red fruit and the tannins turn sharp to vinegar for me. And that can be off-putting. That's not happening here. I don't mind a wee bit of a vinegar note. I don't mind a wee bit of acidity. But if it's a bit too sharp and if it's too powerful and if it's distracting from the rest of the experience, I find it a wee bit off-putting. So harsh tannins, dry, bitter tannins, sometimes acidic notes that bleed into vinegar are a wee bit off-putting. I was nervous that that was the case, but this is soft. This is actually quite well put together. And when you consider the age of this, again, Lindores, let me see if I can find Lindores, again, 2017. This, if it had an age statement at launch, it would have had to have a 3-year-old age statement. No, this is okay. This is okay, but it's what we've been talking about. It's what Greg mentioned there. They've used the casks to their advantage here. If we're going to put out 3-year-old whiskey, we're going to put out some quite rich casks here. And the bourbon, you guarantee it's going to be first fill bourbon. Sherry, it's probably going to be a decent sherry cask in here. And the wine barriques, they're quite available, and they can add a lot of nice red fruity flavours. That's actually quite encouraging, and I would be curious to go back and have another retry of that whiskey with Molly. Ben is saying, I get a wee touch of salt in the Lindores. Oh, wow, okay. Salt is one of those things in whiskey, any whiskey, and it doesn't matter where it's produced or where it's matured. Salt is one of those things, if you suggest to somebody that it's a bit salty, they can pick it up. For me tonight, and by the way, saltiness on whiskey is so much about what you've been eating and your palate. There was just very, very recently a sip of a very sweet Speyside. I was sitting there and getting salt after salt after salt after salt the whole night. And I'm pretty convinced it's got a lot to do with just how your palate is set up. It's not. I wouldn't offer salt as a tasting note for this, but by you suggesting it to me, Ben, I can look for a bit of salt in that, and I can agree with you. Gordon Fraser is saying, I'm really impressed with Lindores. Their casks of Lindores is wonderful too, if a little bit more expensive. They don't seem to have the acquisition issue either. Remember what I said about when this was available, it seemed to be around for a wee bit longer, and you could kind of relax a bit and pick it up just online and buy it. Whiskey with Molly saying almost like salted caramel on the Lindores. Sorry, Helen's Wit is saying that. The sugary thing there, I'll definitely go for a bit of a salted caramel, absolutely. It's not overt, but it's certainly part of the thing. But aye, quite interesting. Another interesting one. Is it 50 quid though? Is it £50? Honestly, Helen, do you think it's £50? I mean, I'm paying £50 for that to have it on my shelf. I want to experience and support these new distilleries that start up. And I don't mind paying a wee bit more for it. I don't even mind the fact that it's not going to be £50 whiskey. But the theme tonight, I hope, is going to be one where I hope that the £50 stays in check, all other things being equal, and the whiskey is able to catch up with the price point. That's crucial. Anthony Lambert saying, had good news from the doctor today. Things are looking better health-wise for me. Looking forward to sharing a dram or two on Saturday with my good mate from Fife, a Taff. A Taff is a Welshman and a jock in Germany. Anthony, let's raise a wee glass to your health, my friend. That's great news to hear. Cheers to you. Slancher. And Doc is saying an idea for a vPub topic, batch variation. Get 3 samples of 3 similar standard malts from different countries and run a blind tasting with 6 barflies task, which are the same. I love gamifying things, Doc, and I think that's a great idea, don't you think? Whiskey Geek is saying, I was given a Macallan blind a few years ago and couldn't place it. It was really struggling. Thought maybe a an official bottle in Bamore, then realised the chorizo from dinner was still lining my palate. It's a real thing. On a Thursday, you're not going to believe this. On a Thursday, I'm getting crazy. If I'm going to be doing this with you, I stay away from spicy, heavy, acidic things like tomato, like spaghetti bolognese and things. I find that throws me off a wee bit. I don't mind eating sweet things, and I don't mind eating dairy-based things like cheese and things like that, creamy dishes and things. I had a burger tonight for my dinner, and I feel like, as long as there's not kind of salsa or anything on it, that's going to be a wee bit better for me sitting with you guys and sipping whiskey. You still have to eat dinner. If you're a whiskey appraiser, if you want to do it seriously, they say that sometime about early or mid-morning is the best time where your palate's at its most sensitive and its freshest. I don't know what your lifestyle is like, but my lifestyle is not one that accommodates mid-morning drinking, unfortunately. And Helen is saying, there's the rub, I think the Lindores shades it just. I would say, I mean, we need to contextualize this. We're judging the whiskies in their infancy. They're brand new, they're fresh and shiny, and they've got all the kind of they've yet to develop into their full personalities. So we have to caveat these things. Roland Whiskey Red is saying, what I like about Lindores is that they offer 5cl sample bottles for those who just want to give it a wee try. Perfect. Absolutely great idea. Very generous. Then Daniel Vermas is saying, talking about prices and is it worth it? Price hike for my beloved Lagavulin is mental, especially the 12-year-old, from 100 to almost 150 over. Daniel, the last couple of vPubs have been very specific, and I've focused in on Lagavulin and the Peat Fest and the price point and the price increase. And I've focused in on Lagavulin and Talisker when we talked about the sweet spot as well 2 weeks ago. It's very in focus on the vPub. And we're going to talk about, okay, these ships have sailed. C'est la vie. Where do we go now? Because there are lots of places to explore. Another idea for a vPub, Glennis is saying glassware. I think I talk about that incidentally. Whiskey Shared is saying, always reset my palate with a well-known dram to see if my taste's in the right ballpark. Toby, that's what I call my calibrator. And it's a good way of doing it. Because even if you're off, that calibrator dram will tell you that you're off. So you maybe want to decide what you pour. Dribs and Drams bought my wee dram to say came across an Edredeur, Caledonia, and the SAQ, that's Quebec, this week. So I bought it. I was disappointed by the 10-year Distillers edition, so I'm hopeful. Listen, if we talk about Doc's idea about batch variation, I think that Edredeur is one of those distilleries, a wee bit like Springbank, a wee bit like a lot of other distilleries out there, that not only do they not kind of focus too much on batch consistency, they celebrate batch variation. And that's very true for Edredeur. If you have a bad Edredeur, don't consider that all the Edredeurs you're going to try are poor. It might not be to your liking, but such is the contrast of one bottle to the next at that distillery that you probably be quite surprised. Lucas is saying brushing your teeth actually helps for tasting whiskey, but yeah, you have to wait for a while to lose the minty flavour. That makes sense to me. I know Charlie McLean in one of his books has talked about, and I've said it in a video as well, when you talk about having something that doesn't necessarily make your palate in a better place to taste whiskey, but it can kind of flatten it a bit, and that is dark bitter coffee, for example. Is a really good palate reset, but sometimes, especially at this time of night, you don't really want to be having a dark black coffee. Water is perfect. Water is perfect, and it's ironic that tonight is the night I have forgotten to bring a glass of water. Let's see if I can have. Is there any chance that my wife will still be kicking around so I don't need to leave Kevin in front of everybody? Can I have a big glass of water? I'm going to capitalize the please. I guarantee she won't come on screen, but you might hear her voice. Bad Edredeur, says Jimmy, like Aquavita, they are all great in their badness. I admit that it's one of these kind of dense, funky, can often be very dirty whiskies. And because they're small and, quite maverick and kind of go into their own kind of drumbeat, there can be some fabulous experiences as well. Edredale was often a try before I buy for me now, but I'm a bit more open to trying anything these days, so I care a bit less. Falscraft is saying, in my experience, brushing teeth and flossing, which a barfly recommended, turned the experience ugly. I eat what I want, just take an hour or two before whiskey. That sounds like a safe advice. And Kevin Grant is saying, I don't think Aquaviti trusts me on my own. And Tim is saying, lol, your wife is a true hero. Enter water with no glass, stage right. No, don't tempt it, Ben. Don't tempt it. And Yash is in. Good to see you, Yash. You might just scare Lynn with your request. I don't think so. I just need to copy, paste, send again. See if she turns up. Anyway, I think we're going to break things up a wee bit tonight. Before I go into uncorking the next two, the Wireworks and the Lochlea, which I know that a lot of you are going to be interested in, we're going to break it up and play a wee game of Is It a Speyside? Now, you remember this game? We're just having a wee fun game. If it's your first time tonight, I hope you enjoy it. But we have 10 questions to try and guess what a core range product is. A core range single malt whiskey. I can only answer yes or no, or my guest can only answer yes or no. We decide who's going to be the target and who's going to be the sniper. Last week we had the Peat Fest, and I sent a sample out to my cousin Kevin, my friend and cousin, in the hope that he could join. But he's a policeman, and he had to send a message to say the shift is I'm not going to get home in time. I can't join you, and it was a shame. And he was coming back. He was depressed. He's on the train. His signal's terrible. I could see him dropping in and out. And at one point, we had 3 or 4 Kevins in the background, all these different connections that he's made trying to come home. But of course, I said, well, I tell you what, we'll do Is It a Speyside next week, and you can come on and play that and maybe share what he thought about his whiskies if he's tried them yet. Kevin, if you're good to come in, my friend, I'll drag in cousin Kevin, also known as Kevin Grant on Whiskey. How you doing? You're not having to work late tonight then?
No, I've got good Wi-Fi tonight. I've not got the ScotRail shockingness to contend with.
I could see in your face, I could see that you were like, just so upset, because I know that the whiskies were good last week, or they were interesting at least. And I knew that it would be nice that you'd be involved with Jim and Sevi and things like that. So, buddy, we'll make it happen in future again. Did you get a chance to try those whiskies, those peaty whiskies?
The annoying thing was, like, I got up, so I wasn't supposed to work. Everything was fine, and I was like, right, I've got this on. And I've got this timestamp for 11 o'clock in the morning. Not that I drink at 11 in the morning. I thought, I've got nothing on. I've got all my colours, my tasting notes, the orders I've put them in, and everything. And I've still got them sitting here as well with your wee toppers.
Do you know what the whiskies are?
No, because I've not caught up from last week. So that's the.
Right. So you don't want me to spoil it for you then?
No, I want to catch up so I know what I'm doing, if I've got them right.
Have you got your favourites? In terms of colours?
Yes.
Okay, well, I tell you what we can do then. I've got some notes from Jim's stream on Monday right in front of me. So I can, if you want to tell me what your favourites are to your least favourite, I'll write them down. Because that's going to be interesting for folk that were watching last week. Just give me your colours, your favourite to least.
So my favourite was blue, orange, green, yellow, pink, red.
My water has appeared. Do you want to say hi?
Me?
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Good night, Lynn. Yeah, so that was. I've got the yellows. I've got the yellow scored out for some reason.
So 1, 2, 3. I've got. What was fourth?
So it was blue, orange, green, yellow, pink, red.
Very uncannily close to the other folk as well. Listen, I'm going to leave you with those. That's uncannily close. I'm really excited that you picked blue and orange as your favourite. Honestly, that's interesting that you did that. And I think the takeaway from last week with that was a common theme. But I'll leave you with it. And if you need to know what they are, I'll give you the link to the slides. Okay, my friend.
It's fine. I'll catch up. I like catching up and seeing what's going on. So I'll get the wee shock factor tomorrow.
That's right. Well, I don't think you will. I think you're in good shape. There's no big surprises there. Red in last place. and blue in first place. So that's it. I don't want to spoil anything for you. Anyway, anybody that's interested in knowing what those colours are, you just need to look at, last week's vPub. And then you'll be able to see that I shared a slide there. And what I need to do is go back in and leave the link for everyone to see. Now that Jim and you have done it, that's everybody done their blind challenge. Okay, buddy, you want a wee game of Visit a Speyside? We're going to do this?
Yes. 100%.
Who's the sniper and who's guessing tonight?
I'll guess. I'll let you sit there.
So you're gonna snipe.
I'll snipe. So I'll snipe.
Okay,
so I'm going to ask you the questions.
I'll
ask you the questions.
I have.
What have you got there? Tell me, and I'll get it in one. No.
I've got it. Well, I've got it right here. Just make sure that it doesn't appear on screen. I have a core range single malt Scotch whiskey. I won't say anything more. I'm not going to give you any help because I know that I'm just going to enjoy the fact that somebody else is doing the guessing. That's always good fun. Let's do that. Let's bring up the countdown, buddy.
Right. I've changed it up. So I've wrote down 5 questions, but I've gone for the theme tonight being that it's newer distilleries. So my questions are kind of based about that. So I'm either going to go really well or I'm going to go terribly wrong here.
Okay.
But I'm
okay, all I would suggest is that you remain adaptable, okay?
I can adapt, yes.
Good luck, buddy. Take it away when you're ready, my friend.
Right, so we always have to ask. Question 1 has to be, is it a Speyside?
No.
Terrible start. Okay, move on. Right. Is the distillery more than 10 years old?
Yes.
Right, that doesn't help then. Is it a Highland?
No. Plenty of questions left, buddy.
Speyside Highland. Is it... Will we go Isla?
No.
Campbelltown?
Yes.
Okay. Right, that's fine. Right, so we're starting to get places. Does it have an age statement?
Yes.
Ooh. So 4 left. So it's got an age statement. It's a Campbelltown. It doesn't help that much because of the Glen Scotia as well. In fact, well, they've got Victoria. Right, okay. I'm going to go, is it Glengyle Distillery? Is it from Glengyle?
Yes. You're in good shape. A Campbelltown Glengyle Distillery with an age statement. Ooh.
Is it the Kilchoman 12-year-old?
Oh, yeah, beauty. Well done. And I think I have to congratulate James Morgan as well. I think James Morgan, it looked like that he might have been the first guy. Obviously, your people in the chat are playing along as well to win themselves a sniper coin. So I think it could be James Morgan. I hope with my mods. You're sitting with which one is that? 56.9, is it?
Yeah, that's the 56.9. That's the latest one. Bar the latest one's about to come out. That's what I'm sipping on just now as well. So,
because you killed it with 3 questions in your pocket. You killed it. That's it. So you came on. I mean, it was 4 times maybe. You trying to play this game before you finally won a coin, and then you step up and you just kick it out the park. There you go.
I needed it. I needed to get one at my system. It had to be done at one point.
Well, you killed that one. That was a peach. Okawame saying your cousin just got promoted to inspector. And I had to laugh at Lucas laughing at me having that burp earlier as well. Listen, we say that you're cousin Kevin, but we're not kidding. You're genuinely my cousin. You're family.
Yeah.
And we're pals, drinking buddies too. But you also have a YouTube channel. What's the name of the YouTube channel? All you have to do is frame your T-shirt and shop. There you go.
Kevin Grant on whiskey. It's just just standard reviews, just be one takes and upload and move on to the following week. So it's just I've got new ideas and stuff for this year. Obviously, I spoke to you the other time about to get a wee inter-review with you, I want to call them, and get some kind of other guys out. So that's going to be the future, but it's getting this out of the way and still going on. So I'm just shy of 600 now for that's been...
For subs?
Yeah, 600. So
yep. How long have you been going? About a year or so now? Just
over a year, yeah. Just kind of lockdown started there and just plodding along. So I enjoy it, you know what it's like. I like talking about whiskey. I enjoy talking to anyone and everyone that knows me. It's my kind of first topic of thing, and my mates have finally started to get it.
We have to do. We have to go. We have to find your channel, and I can. It's no space. I have to drop it in. Kevin Grant on whiskey, right? It's no spaces, right?
Yeah, no spaces.
There we go. I found it. Oh no, you've hit 600 subs. It says 600.
Have I? All right, so there we go.
You're 600 subs tonight. I'm going to drop a link in for Cousin Kevin's channel. Drop along, give him a wee sub if you've got any interest in laid back, comfortable. Kevin's just sharing his journey. He's a few years in now. He was in the business for a wee while. He was in the retail side of whiskey, but he's now a policeman, which is why you couldn't join us last week, because being a policeman in Glasgow can sometimes make that you have to work a wee bit harder at times.
It's
court of talking about Cousin Shane. I wonder, is Cousin Shane a cousin though, Doc? I wonder, is he? Yeah, he's certainly a fabulous guy. But Cousin Kevin is a genuine cousin. He's family. I've known him since he was teeny, really teeny. Fantastic, buddy. Well done. You killed it tonight. You absolutely nailed it. How many new distilleries have you got on the shelf there? How many new ones have you tried?
So what I've got sitting in front of me just now is I've got the Ardnamurchan, the Torraveg, the Lindores, and the Lochlea. I've not opened that yet. Just feel like I want to have people around, because I know a lot of people won't open it, so have more people doing it.
Yeah.
Together.
Well, I'm going to open it tonight. So, in fact, it's the next one. It's the next one I'm going to open. So, it'd be worthwhile. I'll tell you whether I think you should open it or not, or wait for that moment when you're sharing it. If you want to donate it to a question in the chat, feel free, says James Morgan. Might mean that James has already got a sniper coin or whatever. And Peter Lee saying, Aquavite, good evening. Finally, Peter Lee got his coins through. I felt so bad that they'd been waiting so long for it that I sent an extra one. But the original one that I sent, I just put in the post box, is going to turn up. I hope it's either going to come back to me or it's going to turn up with you, Peter. And then you'll have a trifecta, I hope. Anyway, great stuff. Terrific, buddy. Best of luck with the channel. Keep doing it as long as you're enjoying it, as long as it's good fun. Keep sharing the content. Keep enjoying whiskey. And I know you're loving it. And it's nice to hang out with you and enjoy a wee dram with you too. I mean, getting brutalised though, 7. I rarely get it in 7. See, Campbelltown, I think Campbelltown's an easy one. I think I was soft it for you tonight. That's what it was. All right, my friend.
When you said Campbelltown, I thought it was me. I was like, I've got a good chance here. There's Campbelltown, and it's an age statement. I've got 4 to go. I'll take a wee stab. Is it going to be 12 or 16? So I'll take it. But no, again, everything that you do for us every Thursday night. Look, I think there was 340 people in, and I came on. It's went to 317. But we'll just. I'll take the hit. I'll take a hit for that. Don't worry. But no, class. I'm enjoying tonight as always every Thursday, and I'll catch up with last week's tomorrow before I go to work, so I can see how far off I was from my guesses.
I think you'll be surprised, buddy. I think you're pretty much on point. Kevin, cheers, my friend. Hang about if you like, and I'll pull you in for the quiz at the end if you can be bothered, buddy, if you've got the time. Cheers, buddy.
I'll be here. Cheers. Lunch.
Terrific stuff. Cousin Kevin, I'll just drop that link in again as well. So if anybody wants to go and give my cousin and my friend a wee sub, I'd really appreciate it. Let's go on and open this next one now, because we're talking about price here. We're talking about value, all of these things. But for a lot of people, this is a collector's piece. As Kevin alluded to there, a lot of people are going to buy these first releases. If it says first release or inaugural release or whatever it says on there, they're going to be buying it and just kind of keeping it as almost like a memento or part of a collection or whatever, or potentially an investment. And I'm not going to judge anyone for that. It's entirely up to them. Ooh, okay, let's go for a better pop than that. There we go, a wee bit better. For me, though, as you can see, it's much more about the liquid. It's much more about whiskey is more than something to look at. It's more than something to exchange or to sell or to swap. And again, I don't mean to judge anyone. For me, whiskey is much more visceral. It's a much more emotive thing. And it's certainly much more about people and enjoyment, shared interest. So for me, when new distilleries come on board, it's not an opportunity to make money or to add to a collection. It's to experience a thing. This is a wee bit more communicative on the nose. This is Lochlea. This is an Ayrshire distillery, which is a rare thing. There are not many distilleries in Ayrshire. I did mention Ailsa Bay earlier. They're down there. I think this is at 46% ABV. The type on the front, non-chill filtered and natural colour. And this is matured in first fill bourbon and Pedro Jimenez casks. So again, there's a sherry element in here. And I think that that's where this nose is coming from. There's definitely a richness here. The fruit is a darker fruit. There's a plumminess, a jamminess, jam, definitely, like a strawberry jam, a blackcurrant, maybe not black, like something like this, but a kind of maybe black pepper, wee bit of cocoa, chocolate. It's ripe fruit, it's rich fruit, it's maybe cooked fruit. This is richer. It's more of a winter dram than the other two. If you're going to release whiskey young, you need cask influence. You do, don't you? You can't just... You need cask influence to bring this colour because you're going to put natural colour on the label. So it's going to need to be an active cask. If this is 3-year-old whiskey, which it is, because we know that Lochlea came along in 2018. And this was ready in late 2021. It was delayed until early this year. So what I'm detecting here is that the cask influence has muted the spiritiness. So they've gone a bit heavier with cask than the other two. Although the Lindores, that wine cask, I think, was detectable. There wasn't a lot of cask influence on the Clydeside, which is a positive in a lot of respects for it. This one is richer. This is using cask. Let's have a wee sip. I was hoping to this is better than I expected, because a lot of folk had told me, and I think the problem that Lochlea has is the price, right? It's £50-55 plus. I've just sipped this on the back of 2 young whiskies. It's the perfect company to sip this in. If I sip this on the back of a 12 or a 15-year-old, then I'm asking a lot of whiskey. But I'll remind everyone that's in tonight, what I should be doing is sipping this alongside a £50-55 whiskey, because that's really what it has to try and compete with. But the context is slightly different. This is a new distillery. They have to get that capital investment back again. They have to kind of make something. These small scale releases are not cheap to do. I understand we're going to have to pay a premium to enjoy these new whiskies. But we know that the next Lochlea release is going to be 50 quid. And the release after that is going to be 50 quid. And it's going to take a long time for that age to catch up. And by the time that it does, it's going to be north of £50, guaranteed. And that's true for all of these new distilleries. So we have to view it how much it's costing us to drink it. Just forget about age statement, forget about everything, and just think about the bottle of whiskey, what's in the glass, and how much it costs to put that in the glass. I expected to have a go at this tonight because I thought it was going to be sharp and hostile, but it's a wee bit better than I expected. Yes, it's probably that PX cask. First fill bourbon is going to do it favours too, sure. But this is much easier to nose and much easier to sip than I expected. Yeah, okay, there is some spiritiness there, some muted spice. Baking spice, allspice. Touch of clove. Finish, short, medium finish. Actually still there, not bad, medium finish. This is probably more interesting than I expected it to be. Quite a bit more interesting, and that's a surprise. Is it £50 whiskey? Honestly, no. But I'm suddenly endeared by it a little bit. You know, there was a stealth nature to Lochlea. Nobody knew who they were until 2020, I would argue. This distillery suddenly appeared and they'd been going and they'd just been flying under the radar for the longest time. They wanted to keep their light under a bushel, so to speak. But then all of a sudden they were really keen to get their whiskey out as fast as possible. And I was a wee bit cynical towards it. And that's kind of taught me that I need to let the whiskey do the talking and not the chatter and not the perceptions. That's interesting. Listen, I know that this has disappeared. I know that it's going to be tough for you to get a hold of. If you're struggling to get a hold of a Lochlea and you're really desperate to try it or something like that, reach out to me. If you're in a spot that I can meet you and do a handover or something, I'm happy to share samples of this with you. But for me, it's still a young whiskey, but it's not nearly as young as I was expecting it to be. So that's a pleasant surprise, I have to admit. I have to genuinely admit. It's a bit more expensive than I think it should be, but it's just the nature of where we are right now. It's up to you whether you've got that money to spend or not. Daniel's just got back. What's Aquavitae drinking? I've just had my first sip or two of Lochlea, Ayrshire, brand new Ayrshire Distillery. Graham Fraser is saying that's Malcolm Rennie's Lochlea whiskey. He's developed a pedigree at new distilleries, previously Kilchoman and soon Rosebank. That's right, Malcolm Rennie of Kilchoman was at Lochlea. It's now John Campbell, of course. And now Malcolm Rennie has just picked up a distillery manager over at Rosebank as well. So it looks like Rosebank is in good hands, Graham. Absolutely, quite right. Anthony Lambert saying, so very true. I've missed getting together with my whiskey mates over the last few months. Whiskey is made to drink, share and enjoy. This weekend can't come quick enough. Lots of drams to share, Anthony. I can tell that you're in an optimistic mood and you're looking forward to the weekend, my friend. Jimmy Legg bought me a dram to say, have you had any of the Kilchoman work in progress? Does it compare favourably to these whiskies? All of the Kilchoman work in progress, by the time I came to the work in progress, these were very small batch releases, work in progress, Kilchomans. They were not easy to get a hold of, kind of these pastel coloured labels of Kilchoman. They were all really good. I didn't have any Kilchoman work in progress that was anything other than very interesting. I didn't try any peated. There were some sherry casks, there were some bourbon cask releases. I felt that I couldn't wait for Kilchoman to come out. When it came out, I thought the concept of whiskey not being available was new to me back then. It was 2016, I think. And when it came out, I just said, yeah, I'll pick that up next time I'm in. And the next time I went into the shop, it was long gone. But that back then I was able to buy drinks by the dram of Kilchoman, and then it came back into stock quite quickly, and I managed to keep it on the shelf ever since. And it's fantastic stuff, Jimmy. Thanks for the dram. Cheers. Becomes a bit, the spiritiness is there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the Clydeside. White fruit, apple pear. Okay. But fresh and brighter, kind of a clean lick to it now. Really quite interesting to do this kind of thing in contrast. Absolutely. It's wonderful to try this. I've got one more to uncork, and then I want to talk generally about the situation that we find ourselves in with all of these whiskies, and something for us all to think about. This is an English whiskey. This is Wireworks from Derbyshire. This is White Peak Distillery, and this is their first release, and it says in a big silver plaque along the front, first release. I know this to be all natural. I don't see if there's any, is there any writing on here that tells us that that's the case? I'm pretty sure it does. Yes, it says our whiskey is 100% natural colour and non-shelf filter, bottled to enjoy and appreciate with friends and loved ones. Right along the lines of Anthony Lambert's comment there. Fantastic stuff. Isn't it funny how the boys from Springbank, says Jimmy Legg, nailed that product from Glengyle? Makes you think they know something that no one else does. Hey, Jimmy, you can read my mind, my friend. Okay, let's try this. This is a very in-demand whiskey right now. White Peaks Wireworks. This has got to be very new. Now, I've tried samples. It wasn't whiskey that I tried from White Peak. It was spirit. Obviously, it was less than 3 years old. And I was very impressed. It was quite encouraging. It was quite unique and different. .46% ABV, lightly peated spirit. The oak casks here are STR and bourbon. STR is shaved, toasted, and recharred. This is kind of a Jim Swan thing, the idea that you would expose the oak with shaving, and then you would toast it and then rechar it in order to make it as active, or for the used cask to impart as much flavour as possible. A lot of new distilleries have used STR casks with a lot of success. There is peat here, but it's quiet. There's not a lot of peat here at all. The smoke is well. It's the only thing I've had tonight with smoke in it since the Morven at the start of the night. There's a tea note here. I'm immediately thinking maybe it's the kind of slightly savoury aspect that's coming in from a wee bit of peat smoke here. Maybe it's that there's a richness. This is a wee bit more inviting. This feels heavy. This feels dense. And I know that I haven't sipped it yet. I'm not talking about body or weight. I'm talking about trying to unpack the nose. This is the least spirit forward that we've nosed tonight. The fruit is heavy. I'm thinking almost like a really quite sweet marmalade. Okay. It's mulchy. It's kind of the peat is bringing this kind of autumnal aspect to it. It's almost like damp leaves. It's an outdoor thing, definitely. A bit of wet leaf. This is denser than you would expect. It's quite. We just have to have a wee sip here. Remember that everything I'm opening tonight, all these uncorkings, it's the first pour from the bottle. Okay. So there wasn't a lot of spiritiness on the nose, but it's there on the palate. It's young. There's a youthful burst here, but it's vibrant. It's alive. It's communicative. This is the jaggiest. This is the most kind of spiky whiskey. There's a lot to... the texture is good here too. This is the body of this is heavier somehow. This is a much more countryside, agricultural, farmy, thick. This is by far the most interesting. That's so the cask influence is here. There's a real sweetness. There's a real creamy, sweet, dessert-like lick to this. The finish is ridiculously long, but it's a sweet dessert-like finish. It's almost like you've been enjoying creme brulee or something like that. That caramel sugar, syrupy sweetness lingers for a long time. The mulch, the darkness that I was expecting on the nose delivered, but it was quiet. The finish is long. This is staying. This is weighty and dense, and I've always said that I think the biggest threat, or let's say the thing that guarantees good Scotch, is good English whiskey, right? This is good English whiskey. This is just good whiskey. This is the most Moorish, the most, sorry if I'm collapsing into myself here and I'm not being very communicative with you. There is a unique thing there, and it's like a slightly bitter, slightly acidic thing happening mid-palate, and I'm certain that's young spirit. That's a young spirity lick. There's a bit of yeastiness here as well. There's a bit of kind of fermentation thing coming in. Think really quite sweet, doughy fruit, like a pastry element, a Danish pastry or something like that. There's something heavy and sweet here too. This is up there with that thing I was talking about with Ardnamurchan, that every sip can make you really think about it. That you can taste it. There's an active cask here. You can tell that there's a lot of influence coming from the casks. These have been very carefully put together for this release. But there's a complexity and a thickness and a weight to this dram that belies its youth. And I can't put my finger on it. I don't understand. I have to just say, this is, out of the 4 whiskies that I've uncorked tonight, this is the one that I would be stealing. And it kind of goes against the messaging, because I think it's almost a moot point, because this whiskey that I'm talking about, nobody can buy. It's gone. It's disappeared. It's not available for anyone. I'm certainly glad to have it because I think it's an interesting whiskey. But it's £65. Bimber is £65. You know, there are some releases out there that's up there. Waterford was a wee bit north of even £65 for the majority of the releases, not them all. So there are some expensive new distilleries coming on board. And I understand that. I understand the investment. I understand the cost that's been involved. Maybe the cost of a White Peak and a Waterford, they're going to be very, very different. But regardless, the first release of whiskey is not going to repay back the investment. This is a long-term plan. So I think it's important that we understand how much we're paying. This is the most compelling out of the 4 whiskies that I picked up and opened tonight. There's no doubt about that. Is it £65 worth of whiskey? I'm glad to have this, and I don't regret paying £65 for it, honestly. but it's not £65 whiskey. It's a different thing altogether. Let's compare. If you go into the Scotch landscape right now for £65, I can buy a Glencadam 15 and have change. I can buy a Glenturret 12. An amazing experience with Glenturret 12 for that kind of money. I can buy the brand new naturally presented Royal Brackla 12 for that money. I can buy a Deanston 18-year-old, my whiskey of the year, for £65. Now, that's not the retail, but you regularly find it on offer for 65 or even less. So I have really enjoyed this £65 whiskey tonight. But we have to keep this in perspective. Would we have this? This is interesting and unique. Or would we have an 18-year-old malt? That's really, really down to personal preference. It's down to what you're getting out of whiskey. It's down to what whiskey means for you. But for me, if I didn't have a channel, if I didn't want to do this, if I didn't want to open these bottles for you, I think that would be a hard thing to balance. We're chasing flavors. We're chasing experiences. We're chasing new things. We want the next epiphany. That's what's compelling about whiskey, genuinely. But I don't think it's going to come from 3, 4, 5-year-old whiskey. Ardnamurchan is close. This is pretty damn close. These other ones have got a lot to do. They've got a lot of time. They've got a lot of maturity. They need our patience. But what they also need is us to be willing to pay the price that they're asking. And I think often it's too much. I don't mind if they keep that price, if they follow the Ardnamurchan policy of 45, 45, 45, 40. Every release is £45. Fantastic. But I'm nervous that they'll tell us that that's the case, and then they don't follow that. I once pitched the question directly to Mark Rainey in a tasting, and I asked him, Waterford. I said, it's expensive. This is compelling. And I think Waterford is a wonderful whiskey, but not for the price that it costs me to own it. I would have more Waterford on the shelf. I think it's wonderfully textured. It's very pure. The purity, the kind of really surgical experience that you can have with Waterford is pretty unique. And I've predicted for a long time that Waterford might end up making the best Scotch whiskey outside of Scotland, genuinely. But why don't I have more here? Because it's expensive. When I challenged Mark Rainey, he said, yes, it's expensive, but understand how much it's cost us to put that whiskey out there. And he told me that when he recovers those costs, as the whiskey matures over time, the price point will stay the same. He assured me that year by year, as the whiskey becomes more and more mature, the price doesn't rise. Now, I predict that that's fully going to be affected by demand for that product, understandably so. I hope that he's right. I hope that he does the Ardnamurchan thing, regardless of what the demand is for the product. The next batch comes out at the same price. There's a lot to be said for it, genuinely. That's a philosophy. That's an attitude to your customer, and there's respect woven into that as well. Gaichen, so good to see you. It's Gaichen. I know you're a Gaelic speaker, but it's wonderful to see you. And I was saddened to get a varnish note from Waterford Rathclough. I know they're looking to highlight the grain, but the varnish note covered everything. Well, I would suggest that you try the organic or try the cuvee. That's going to be a much nicer experience for you. Well, Brother Ray saying, I celebrate the new distilleries are bottling non-chill filtered in natural colour. They set the new standard, and I hope the established brands will all follow. That's a very important point. And Helen is saying, those cheeky wee bastards. She's talking about English whiskey here, of course. Watching you drink whiskey is great fun for some reason, says Jimmy Legg. I might be alone in that one, though. I think probably, Jimmy, you are. But it's okay to admit it, because I like to hear it, my friend. Thank you. Danny Hebington is saying, Sevi is like, well, I'm not getting that back now, am I? You're not. He's not getting his fireworks back. No, I'm quite happy to have that. I'm happy to have the Lochlea too. Chris Banks is saying, have you heard any release dates for Harris? It must be 7 years old. I would really love to try that. I'm very keen to try Harris. I don't know when that's on the radar. Connor, My Whiskey Journal, good to see you, Connor. Great night. Have to head off. Catch the rest on the replay tomorrow. Thanks for shouting. And I think it was your first tonight. Whiskey with Molly Bennett saying the value is interesting in new distilleries. No, they aren't worth the money when compared to older spirits, but you have to pay if you want to try new distilleries out of interest. Ben, I want to agree with you, but there is evidence that suggests that we are both wrong. After I've welcomed this wee dram from my friend Dribs and Drabs, I'll prove the point to you. Dribs and Drabs is saying I have inaugurals from Rassie and Ardnamurchan coming from Alberta. And a Waterford Lakefield 1.1. Waterford is $100 here. They're good for $85. Well, I'll thank you for your wee virtual dram, my friend. Thanks, Dribs and Drams. That's the first dram I've finished tonight. That tells you that I've really quite enjoyed this whiskey. There is a spirity youth to it, but there is so much richness here. Is that that cask influence here? Is that STR thing? Is it that's bringing the sweetness and the flavour? Bimber's done amazing things with casks. Active casks is very much what's making that Bimber spirit pop right now. It's a big ask, £65. I have to be honest, this is an expensive whiskey, but that's quite impressive. Let me take Ben's comment there, and let me tell you why every single whiskey I've shared with you tonight is far too expensive. Far too expensive because there's a difference between recouping your costs, long-term business. Nobody starts a distillery for a quick buck. There's decades of investment required in order to make it a proper success. Of course it is. It's whiskey we're talking about. There's very few models like it. So we have to consider that they've got into that, not to just jump on the popularity bandwagon, but they're genuinely invested in making whiskey for whiskey's sake, and they're invested in a labour of love, a passion project that's going to follow that really, really long, long time before they see any real money back again. So for us to see that as soon as the whiskey turns 3 years, bang, out it comes. That's you're kind of going to be suspicious immediately, unless it's fantastic whiskey that you just can't wait to share with the world, which is unlikely. It's not really what whiskey is, and I think that kind of plays out oftentimes. There are distilleries out there that are able to show us what it costs to produce whiskey. So let's look at the price increases from Diageo, the likes of Lagavulin 16, Talisker 10, Talisker 18 especially, that's just gone out of reach price-wise. So we look at it and we say, well, you know what? Maybe it was too cheap for all those years, Lagavulin 16. Maybe it was undersold genuinely. Maybe we should be paying £75 for 16-year-old diluted, coloured, filtered malt. Nope, we should not. Maybe we should have to pay £50 for brand new whiskey, minimum price from these new distilleries. Nope, we do not. Because there are producers out there that show us that that doesn't have to be the case. They can artificially elevate the product to £45, but they can keep it at £45 going forward. And there are even more hammer blow examples than that. This is a 16-year-old single malt whiskey. This is produced naturally, 46% ABV, natural colour, unchill filtered. It's from Glengyle, it's Kilchoman. Of course it is. 16 years old. Worse than that, it's not produced at Lagavulin. It's not produced at an efficient distillery at all. It's produced part-time at a distillery that has to start up. There's an inertia to it starting up, and then it closes down again, and then it starts up because it's producing part-time. So this fully natural, wonderful whiskey experience at 16 years old, how much did it cost? £60. 60 to £65. Fully natural. Here's their 8-year-old cask strength. This is cask strength. Using some super active casks. Look at the colour of this. Maybe expensive casks, maybe some investment in these casks. How much is a wonderful, I mean, okay, I'm talking about something that we can't buy, but it's not about the availability of it. It's how much it would cost us at retail if we could buy it. This was £50, £50 to £55, depending on where you are. And the one that Kevin nailed and is at Speyside tonight, £40, even less, sometimes £35. Fully natural, inefficiently produced single malt whiskey, 12 years old and £35. That's the problem that the new distilleries have. Because all of these whiskies that I've enjoyed tonight have been sipping in contrast with each other. These are all young whiskies. They're competing with each other. As soon as you go out to the mature whiskies out there, they can't. It's difficult for them. Yes, they're interesting, but do we really want to go back and have a second and a third pour? Because that plays into, do we really want to go back and have a second and a third bottle on the shelf after the first, the inaugural release, the first release, the second, the third release, whatever it may be? The only one that's managed to achieve that, in my opinion, the only ones are Kilchoman and Ardnamurchan. That's going to be the challenge. Wallets, bank accounts, and pockets have very long memories. And if we pay over the odds for diminished experiences at the get-go, at the start, we're going to remember that for a long time. They need to make these whiskies as good as they can be. And if they are charging a premium for the initial releases, they have to be true to us and look after us and keep that premium in check as they go forward and the whiskey becomes more and more mature. We're judging them by the producers out there that's able to do it for this. We know that Kilchoman are not making a loss on their product. Don't tell me that Talisker needs to be sold suddenly for €200 a bottle, Talisker 18. Don't tell me that Lagavulin 16 suddenly has to be 90 or €100 per bottle. Don't tell me that that's what's required in order to make that a profitable exchange. What's happening is that that's the demand that we are paying for. We are part of the problem. Don't stock up. Don't empty the shelves. Step away. There is lots and lots of choice. But that's the same for the new producers as well as the incumbent established producers. Whiskey 101 is saying maybe some of the £65 in the cost we need to pay to keep supporting 46% natural colour and non-chill filtered. I've talked about that. This may help the big boys wake up to what we want. These newbies will not stay young. Absolutely. Kilchoman. Why can nobody buy Kilchoman? Nick? Natural product, delicious, interesting. The price is honest. When we can buy Kilchoman today or any point in the future, we're going to just buy it blind. We're just going to snap it up because we trust the philosophy. They've built that trust in us. Jaime is saying, we don't get a lot of new distillery releases here in the Philippines, and when we do, they're just too expensive. Example, Ardnamurchan for £80. I know it's different, the context of how much you have to pay. Ardnamurchan is not an £80 whiskey, absolutely not. But I consider that it might be interesting for you, Jaime. I don't know if I'd be paying £80 for it, absolutely. It's difficult. But then again, because you're in the Philippines, maybe your Kilchomans are going to be much more expensive. Maybe your other things that we're comparing it to tonight is going to be contextually more expensive as well. Falscraft is saying, well, I would say Wolfburn are not too overpriced either, and never have been. That's why I started tonight on Wolfburn. They've never been too expensive, and they became before this huge hype happened in new whiskey production and distilleries. Danny is saying, did you see the new batch Glenallachie 21 cask strength released today? 260 quid. No, thank you. I wonder how many bottles there are. I guarantee you that it's probably a price that's based a lot on availability rather than quality. So as we're chasing flavour, we are not collectors, right? We are enthusiasts. We love the flavour of the whiskey. If that's what our quarry is going to be, we know that these special editions, that's not for us. That's for the people who have more money than we do. Chris is saying, I think a good point is older distilleries could subsidise their single malt aged whiskies with blend sales. The new distilleries have to make their profit on their core range. I don't think there's subsidies going on in anywhere in the business. I don't think any element of whiskey is subsidising. They're not pulling anything out of a loss-making situation in order to service the enthusiast, for example, Chris. I don't think that's happening. I really genuinely don't. You know, there are enough examples out there. Diageo are charging now £75 for Lagavulin, okay? Dalwhinnie, similar size. Clynelish, similar size. 14-year-old and 15-year-old product, much, much cheaper. I'm scared to say that because I'm suddenly nervous that Dalwhinnie is going to be hiked in price and Clynelish is going to be hiked in price. They're telling us how much it costs to make this whiskey. It's about perception. It's about luxury brand placement. And, you know, they don't want their product to be seen as being cheap or mainstream. They want the product to be exclusive. Fine. Good luck with making that taste exclusive. That's where you're going to be let down. Tim Alec is saying not going to make the quiz, but another fascinating vPub. Cheers, Aquavita night all. Tim, good night. I hope you pick up the quiz on the replay. Whiskey with Molly Ben is saying, in order to get myself psyched up tonight, is there a quiz? And is the Menno multi-mission quiz? No, it's an Aquavita quiz tonight, but I suspect it might be a wee bit jaggy, but not too bad, I hope. Don McCuslin is saying, thanks for the great discussion. I'll catch the quiz on replay, and hopefully I can catch an Ardnamurchan one of these days. I think, Don, that they're becoming more and more available. I just sent you a message this evening, and I'm suspicious that after I hit the send button, I wrote Dan instead of Don. If that happened, I apologise now, my friend. Thanks very much for choosing to join us this evening. Everyone is saying, is the difference between paying stockholders versus paying family-run businesses? Well, that may be part of it, but it doesn't matter what your business is set up to do, what the model is. It just has to be profitable and sustainable. So much of it is about integrity, honestly speaking. And unfortunately, whether you look at politics, whether you look at business, whether you look at ethics, it doesn't matter these days. Everybody's in it for the short term, right? There's very few people, let's say, that's out there kind of having just, well, okay, let's be honest. Let's make the world better for the next generation. Let's take a long-term view to all of these things. And I think when a company does have that philosophy, you can feel it in the product and you can see it in the practices. So we make our choices. They're allowed to make their choices as a business. We're allowed to make ours as customers. Anyway, how are we doing on time? Oh my goodness, 2 hours. We've not even started the quiz. I thought I was going to keep it neat tonight, but I failed again. But we did have to uncork 4 bottles, and that takes a wee bit of time. Let's quickly put some other new ones up that I've been enjoying as well. Torrevieck. Summary of Torrevieck is that, yes, it's interesting already. I quite like it. This is a good spirit. It's a wee bit close to young peaty Islas for my liking. There's so much choice in that space right now because of the machine that is Colila, more than likely. But Torrevieck is just a wee bit too close comparing to that for my liking. Rassi, if you like cask influence, if you like spice and red fruit and things like that, this brings a lot of that nature into things. This is young and spirity. It's a wee bit sharp in places. This is still to show its full potential, but it's also very densely flavoured. And they're using casks very well, that Chinkapin oak, some rye cask in here as well as some red wine barriques. This is a flavourful whiskey, but I will caveat saying that this is a wee bit of Marmite whiskey. Some love it, some hate it. Most people that I speak to quite enjoy this wee whiskey. I'm enjoying it. What else have we got that's new? King's Barnes. I tried a few King's Barnes, didn't really like it at the start. I really enjoyed a single cask that I got one time, but it was very spirity, very young. This is suddenly something to look and pay attention to. This is the Dream to Dram, not expensive, worth your attention. This is the first, I think, expression from them that really shows that what they can make when they put together something that's a core range, something with a bit more of a long-term game plan. I've been enjoying the King's Barnes. I've talked about it often on the vPub. And finally, Nicknean. It's often overlooked, I think, because the packaging looks like a gin bottle. I think they talk about highballs and cocktails on the side. I think the philosophy behind this maybe is a wee bit kind of jarring for some whiskey enthusiasts. But let me tell you, the way they're going about their business, the way they're doing things with recycled glass, sustainability forward, much like Ardnamurchan in that respect, the way they're bringing out batch after batch after batch in order to satisfy demand rather than build up this fake phantom demand that could be perceived, this kudos wallowing in, seeing their product on the secondary market going for crazy prices. Nicknean didn't choose that route. The price has gone up a wee bit since launch, so instead of being a £45 product, it's closer to the £50 mark. Don't let the highball thing put you off. If you like a light, easy, summery whiskey that's well put together, there is a wee bit of cask play in here as well, but it's very, very easy to enjoy. And if we talk about philosophies and integrity, that's intact here for the most part. I've missed a couple of virtual drams. Let me grab those quickly before they disappear. Jimmy Jazz has bought me a dram. Thank you so much, Jimmy. I'll get to that in a second. I don't want to miss... No, I've got it here. He's saying, just secured a White Peak at retail cost. You have superstar barflies. Very excited to open for my US friends. I think you're going to enjoy it. I think you're going to enjoy it. That's the White Peak is the wireworks that I've enjoyed tonight. Thank you very much for the generous dram, Jimmy Jazz. It was a pleasure to hook up with you last year, and I hope it's not going to be too long before we do it again. And like somebody else I managed to meet last year, despite all the carnage that we were up against, Graham Young is saying, looking forward to the replay for most of the vPub tonight. Quick check-in with you all. Cheers, Aquavita and Barflies. Graham, I hope you enjoy it, my friend. Maybe you can stay for the quiz. Thanks for the dram, Jimmy and Graham. Everyone is saying, I think we have established Diageo as the evil empire and Roy's our whiskey Jedi. I have to say, Diageo are capable of great things, really great things. And they're capable of doing things at a good price point as well. I mean, a 15-year-old, yes, it's chilled, it's filtered and coloured and things, but a 15-year-old Dalwhinnie for less than £40 is great value. You know, it's difficult not to be able to enjoy that kind of value proposition. Clydeside is still fantastic. Lots of things within their reach. But Diageo have this bizarre habit of bringing out special releases at ridiculously amped prices that it just feels like they're just so out of touch. But they do own some of the crown jewels in Scotch whisky distilling. That's the truth of it. Whiskey 101 has bought me a dram as well. To say love nickname and philosophy, we need to think about adding an E to our ABCD now for E, environment, local barley, no tin, etc. Let's encourage change. Nick, I think that's a beautiful idea, and I agree with it fully. Chris B has also bought me a dram to say, enjoy some American whiskey on me. I do have a fair lick of American whiskey here, but it's not always available here. I'm very grateful to have fantastic barflies that support me, and they bring me treats from time to time. Nick, thank you very much for your dram, and Chris B, thanks to you too. Fantastic. Let's pull in Cousin Kevin. You ready for this quiz, my man? Are you ready to join me for this?
Ready to go. I've got my wee letters ready and also.
Well, you don't need your letters tonight because you're not competing with anybody. It's just you, so you can just say it right out. The spotlight will be on you, buddy, but I know that you're up to the task. I think that this is a bit of a tricky quiz tonight, Cousin Kevin. If you can manage a 5 tonight, it is something to celebrate the quiz. If anybody's willing to stay for the quiz, you might have a bit of fun doing that. It'd be good fun. I would consider this to be crunchy in places tonight, but not too bad. Let's wait and see. It'd be nice to celebrate at least 1 or 2 10 out of 10s tonight if possible. But it's all optional. Share the scores only if you want to. Play along only if you want to. You're only playing against yourself. There's no prizes or anything. Mikey Hay is in and shouting quiz. Wonderful to see you, and Mikey. I'm missing you, buddy. I hope you're doing well. Dogs of Donkers is saying Clydeside 14 is still £35 on Amazon. Oh, wow, £35 on Amazon. I might have to buy some before they inevitably increase in price. Well, listen, Colin, if they increase in price, step away. Don't buy up the stock. Don't give them empty shelves just because there's been a price hike announcement coming out. If they decide that their strategy is to hike up prices, stop buying the product immediately and go elsewhere. Don't reward cynical business strategies, Colin. But if you can get that for 35 quid, then more power to you, my friend. Kevin, are you feeling in good shape for this tonight? What whiskey do you think I'm going to pour to enjoy the quiz tonight? What one do you think I'm going to pour?
Oh, for tonight, after what you've been going on about, you're going to have to go down to Campbelltown, aren't we? After my victorious win. And
yes, celebrate your win. This is the 16-year-old I'm pouring tonight. This is me pouring one more dram than I said I was going to have tonight. Next week, when I launch this new project with everyone I've been talking about and teasing tonight, I'm also going to have to confess the whiskey health figures, how many whiskies and how much alcohol I've been drinking over the month. And unfortunately, no spoilers, but it's much, much higher than I expected. It genuinely is, and it's a bit of a fright. So I've had to kind of try and work out ways to weave in, making it easy for me to find ways to cut down and bring the alcohol count down a little bit. Not just in whiskey, but generally, because I've been enjoying wine and beer as well, which is the real thing that's coming unstuck. So we all have to be aware, don't we, my friend?
Yes, 100%.
It's too easy to get carried away.
Too easy, far too easy.
Let's enjoy the quiz, everyone. Let's start when everybody's comfortable and ready. I'll try and keep up with the chat as best I can. Good luck, cousin Kevin. Question 1. Which Fife distillery is most closely associated with the 1494 first written record of Scotch whisky? Famously, that is the James IV commissioning a letter to be sent to Friar John Corr in order that he make available 8 balls of malt. Which distillery are we talking about? Which one is most closely associated? A. Kingsbarns, B. Daftmill, C. Lindores Abbey. All 3 of those are Fife distilleries, all new distilleries, relatively speaking. Michael Besley's bought a dram to say, cheers, Roy. Great discussion as always. Michael, I really appreciate that. It's always difficult for me to perceive if the discussion has been great, because it always feels like I'm just turning up here and having fun. And the idea that you guys can have fun with it as well is crazy to me. I'm hoping this is a softball for everyone. Kevin, what do you think?
I guess Lindores. I think they're the kind of oldest out the lot for the kind of stories of the new. So I'm going to go Lindores.
Spot on. Absolute. Oh, that Kilchoman. My goodness. Compared to what I've been drinking tonight, it's a completely different league. It's Lindores Abbey is absolutely correct. Now making whiskey again, and we tried it this evening. And they also make a product, interestingly, called Aquavitae. Question 2. Falkirk Distillery eventually came on stream in 2020 using a mash tun and stills from which distillery? I think this could be a bit of a banana skin. Falkirk eventually came on stream last year. Oh no, 2 years ago now, 2020. Were their stills and mash tun from A. Rosebank, B. Imperial, or C. Capardonic? So this is a practice that's this is not really an option anymore, I guess, that all these closed distilleries have given up all their spare parts now. They're all kind of gone. Ben Wyvis, Capardonic, so many. I'm trying to think of the one that was, what's the one up in Dumbarton? Can't remember what it was called now that Brooke Laddie took. But there's not, if you're starting a new distillery now, there's not going to be a lot of parts around for you anymore. But Falkirk Distillery managed to get a mash tun and some stills. From which distillery? What do you think, cousin Kevin?
It's tough. I'm drawn to Rosebank, but because they're rebuilding, I would be against that because I think they would want all their equipment. So I'm going to go. I think Imperial's been closed longer. I can't remember. I'm going to go C, Capardonic. I think potentially C.
Nice deduction. Nice deduction. Capardonic is absolutely correct. They did intend to use the Rosebank equipment originally, but Rosebank was looted and all their equipment got nicked before that could happen. And this was way before Ian MacLeod got Rosebank and Rosebank was brought back to life again. So yes, it was Capardonic's mash tun and stills. Well done, Kevin. Question 3. Which vital production component failed for Ardnamurchan only a few years into their production? So they had invested in something. They thought that it was going to last them a while, and it ended up not lasting them very long at all. Which component am I talking about? Is it A, their stills, B, their mash tun, or C, their wooden washbacks? I can tell by Kevin's reaction he's going to have to be stabbing a guess or throwing a dart at this one.
I remember having, when you done the live at the distillery and they were talking about it as well, and I listened to podcasts and it's been out, but I've not taken it in. I'm torn between A and B. That's my choice, but I'll go with
your
B.
gut.
Yeah, I'll go with B.
You think their mash tun failed after the first few years? Okay, I can tell you that it was their wooden washbacks. The lounge kicked us out the park. Almost everybody knows. You might remember we did a live stream from Ardnamurchan. I hope that it came up in the live stream. It might have been, or it might have been not been mentioned. But they originally invested in old cognac vatting containers, vessels, or vats from France. And after the first just few years of using them, they start to buckle and go out of shape. And they had to invest in 4 new Oregon pine wooden washbacks to marry up with their 3 stainless steel wooden washbacks. So it's your first banana skin tonight, buddy, but you're doing well. 2 out of 3. Question 4, if Ardnamurchan is the most westerly, Wolfburn is the most northerly, which of these is the most easterly? I'm talking about mainland, of course. You know, you've got further west in Ardnamurchan on the islands, of course. You've got further north on the Orkneys, but but east, we've got nothing Scotch whiskey on the east. Which is the most easterly of these? A, Brewdog, B, Kingsbarns, or C, the Borders?
Most easterly. So geography was never my strong point, but I've been to Brewdog. Kingsbarns, I think St Andrews, Borders with a name, but Kingsbarns on the coast for golf. Oh, aye, I'm going to go Kingsbarns because it's right on the coast. There's water around it that I remember. Aye, B. I'll lock in B from shocking geography and going with golf more than whiskey here.
We have family in Ellen, don't we?
Yeah, so Andrew literally lives less than half a mile from Brewdog.
Right. He is by far the furthest east on the Scottish mainland. Further east than Kingsbarns, further east than the Borders.
That's shocking to me.
He is the furthest east on the mainland. So there we go. The answer was A, and I think that might have caught a few folk in the lounge as well. So don't feel too bad about it, buddy. Question 5, if you follow the Aquavitae Barflies page on Facebook, this is going to be a bit easier for you. This is a Graham Fraser picture that we have here. I saw that Graham was in tonight. So he's got a freebie tonight. And anybody that picked up on this feed will get this too. We're looking at a distillery. I'm just going to ask you what it is this week. A, Glentalkers, B, Milton Duff, or C, Breval. We're looking at a white distillery, whitewashed painted walls, fairly modern architecture, I would say. But there is a pagoda, a prominent pagoda roof in the centre, and a yellow chimney, not a red chimney, a yellow one. Now, you can probably read on the side that it says Chivas Brothers, but that doesn't give you much of a clue because all of the distilleries on the list are owned by Chivas: Glentalkers, Milton Duff, and Breval. Breval is sometimes known as Braes of Glenlivet. What are we looking at, Kevin?
I'm sure that's C, if I've been checking the Barfly chat correctly, and I think I put that in as well, saying that was Breval. If I'm wrong, I'll be...
Well done. There's a freebie for you. We are looking at Breval. Absolutely spot on. A relatively speaking new distillery, not new in the context that we're covering tonight, but in terms of post-war, this is a new distillery. I think this is a 1970s distillery. Could be 60s, but I feel like it's 70s. Breval is the answer. C. Question 6, past the halfway point. I've got to bring it home now. This is a bit of a banana skin, I think. Which of these years was the busiest for founding new distilleries? Okay, we know according to the Malt Whisky Yearbook, we're looking at somewhere in the order of 34, 35 new distilleries listed there. Most of them are very recent, of course, but which was the busiest year? Was it A, 2013, B, 2017, or C, 2020? Which of these years was the busiest for founding new distilleries? 2013, 2017, or 2020? Jimmy Legg is chiming in to say 1973 for Breval. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, my friend. 1973. Good stuff. Oh, there's some quite low scores tonight. Michael Besley, I apologise. I'm making it a wee bit tough for you tonight. Thanks for being honest and sharing your score. Hell's Wid on a 3. Peter Box on a 3. Wow, these are normally big scorers. 2 Slow Rob on 2. Lucas 3. Wow, this is quite a tricky quiz tonight. I do apologise. I wonder who our Whiskey Radar Roland is not complaining. He's on 5 out of 5. Cousin Kevin's currently on 3 out of 5. Kevin, what would you say here? What's the busiest year for new distilleries? This is a tough one.
I'm torn for A and B. I think B, just by all the releases that I've got in front of me here. You know, I've got 4 releases, and they have to be the 3 years. So I'm going to go to B, because if it was A, and they've not released yet, it's going to be, that's too long. So B, I'll lock it in, but I'm not confident on it.
I can tell you that it's B. Nice. Okay, A was 2013, only 2 distilleries in 2013, Wolfburn and Strathern. C, 2020 was 3. I've got it written down here. It was Bonington, Falkirk, and Burnabenny. But in 2017, that was the year. That was Aberargie, Clydeside, Glenwivis, Borders, Nicknean, Lindores, Rassay, and Ardnamurchan. Busy year back then, wasn't it? So there you go, 8 for 2017. Question 7. Nelstrup is a name associated with the whiskey of which country? The name Nelstrup. A, Ireland, B, England, C, Wales.
Nelstrup.
Jimmy's copy and pasting from his spreadsheet tonight, I think. He's just managed to type in ever so quickly without any spaces: Aberargie, Ardnamurchan, Borders, Clydeside, Glenwivis, Isle of Rassay, Lindores Abbey, and Nicknean. Terrific stuff, Jimmy. Greg is saying I lost time double checking, so lost track of questions. Now it's possible that Cappadonic had a lot of stills, so they split them up. Weird though. Yeah, it's true that Cappadonic has donated at least part of their stills. Well, I think Falkirk only have a wash and a spirit still, and it makes sense that Cappadonic, Glen Grant too, it was famously known, it would have had more stills. I'm not really sure entirely, Greg, but it makes sense that they would have had more than just one pair. What do you think, Kevin? Have you heard the name Nelstrup?
I'm going to, for the theme again, I mean, we talked about, just for your quiz earlier on before we came on, about price point, would you buy a whiskey at this age, that age? I'm going to go B for England. I think Nelstrup has something to do with something with England and the whiskey there. James
Nelstrup was the first guy to dream of an English whiskey distillery coming back again. And his son, Andrew Nelstrup, is the guy whose face that we most associate it with today. Norfolk St. George's Distillery. They weren't necessarily the first, but they are well known to be the first to market and the first to make a name for English whiskey. They could not have predicted the boom that we would find ourselves in today, of course. Question 8. Glen Scotia has a capacity, theoretical capacity, of 800,000 litres per annum and is typically producing annually around 500,000 litres per annum. But in the crazy year, the topsy-turvy 2020, how much did it produce? Glen Scotia was at A, 220k litres per annum. B, 420 litres per annum. Obviously, this is all 1,000 litres per annum. C, 620,000 litres per annum. A, 220, B, 420, C, 620. I can imagine that you'd be throwing a dart at this, but the theoretical capacity is 800,000 litres. Typically, the run rate is about 500,000, but in the topsy-turvy year of 2020, how many did they actually make? 7 out of 7 for Graham Fraser. Wow, fantastic.
I think it would be C, because of how much whiskey changed in lockdown and everything, and it was just a boom, and how much Glen Scotia came on the map with Victoriana and all that prior. I'm going to go with C. I'm going to go right to the top. They went above than usual and put 120k over the 500, so 620k.
Either you are paying attention to the banana skin or you're ignoring it, one or the other. A lot of distilleries were thrown into production to make alcohol for hand sanitizer and things like that. But despite that, Glen Scotia only managed to produce 220,000 litres in 2020 because of the amount of weeks and months that the distillery was silent during that time, which the distilling industry right across Scotland found itself in. There's going to be a shortage of 2020 vintage malt at some point in the future, absolutely no doubt, because a lot of it was switched over to producing, like I say, for hand sanitizer and things like that. A was the correct answer for that one. Question 9. Which of these was first to run spirit? Which was the first of these distilleries to run spirit? A, Waterford. B, Torravik. C, Bimber. Yeah, it's brutal tonight. Bit of banana skin here as well. You can see that a lot of these are on theme. John Drinks is on 6 out of 8. Tremendous scoring, John. Whiskey Radar on 8 out of 8. Roland, fantastic stuff. Molasses Mike on 6 as well. I'm growing to hate bananas. Superb. Let's see. Andrew Pears on a 6. Sugar Kitty, good to see you on 6. Mikey Hay on 6 so far. Whoop, I'm having a dram to celebrate. Good for you, Mikey. Edwin Hengbers is in. Good to see Edwin. And here was Michael Henry telling me he was busy, said, with Whiskey with Molly. He was busy, but he's probably busy making alcohol for hand sanitizer. What would you guess, Kevin?
It's a guess. I'm 50-50 with A and C. The first to run, I'll go Bimber. I've heard more of Bimber. I know Waterford's out there and stuff, but I think Bimber just got a more social profile. So I'll say C, just for that they're the two. And aye, C, Bimber. I'll lock it in. I'm happy with that.
Terrific. Unfortunately, it's Waterford. December 2015 for Waterford, 2016 for Torravik, and 2016 for Bimber. I mean, it's 2015 for Waterford, so a lot of the time when we're looking at Waterford, we're thinking that it's a 3-year-old spirit, but actually there's a chance that a lot of Waterford, especially in the cuvee now, is going to be quite a bit more mature than that. Andrew Butler is asking for Menno to come back. Andrew, I'm so sorry. I appreciate that maybe looking at this, that it's quite tricky. Mikey is saying 631 subs for Kevin on YouTube so far. Terrific.
Wow.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.
This is cousin Kevin helping me out tonight and hanging out for a game of Visit Speyside in the quiz. But he's got his own content over there on YouTube as well. I've been dropping the link in. I've just dropped it in a few seconds ago. I'll drop it in there again. If you drop by and give him a wee sub, I'm sure he'd be very appreciative. Last question, big guy. Let's see. How are you scoring just now? How are you keeping?
I've not get my score, but I think I'm maybe on 4 or 5. I'm close. I've had the banana skins have absolutely slipped me up anyway. I've been like a Mario Kart and trailing behind.
I would have to say that I think that question 10 is never. You don't want to be relying on question 10 to get your pass mark right. It is a bit of an asshat tonight, but just to appease our friend Jimmy Legg, it's not a capacity asshat question tonight. It's a wee bit different, but it's still got a whiff of the asshat about it. Lochlea owners Neil McGeoch sold what before becoming a full-time distiller? So the owner of Lochlea did something else before he was a distiller. He gave up these professions to become a distiller. What did he sell before he made whiskey? Was it A, clothes, shoes, and cattle? B, wood, ironmongery, and sheep? Or C, flour, grain, and dogs? This is a Menno question. I think this is a Menno question. Greg is complaining. Oh, Greg, 2 unfair quizzes in a row, in my humble opinion, so me not happy. Okay, me not dead, though. It's just a game. Okay, Roy. Good for you, Greg. Brutal quizzes, I know. And you usually do so well on them as well, Greg. Bas Oosterveld is in as well. Bas, good to see you, my friend. Thank you very much for your recent support. It was nice to get a wee message from you as well. I will respond to you, buddy. Kev needs to pull out a blue shell. There you go. You need something to save you here. So can you fathom what Neil McGeoch sold before becoming a full-time distiller? Was it clothes, shoes, and cattle? Or was it wood, ironmongery, and sheep? Or flour, grain, and dogs?
I was hoping there was just going to be a kind of farm question of an answer, and every single one has something to do with farms in it. And I'm like, okay, now Neil McGeoch, I've got no idea. So it's an absolute guess,
Throw
and
it
I'll
down.
guess. I'll go right for a bullseye. I'll take B for wood, ironmongery, and sheep, because there's loads of sheep in there, so people are always buying and selling sheep. Dogs.
Try again.
Maybe A, because people will need to wear clothes and
Hey!
shoes. People wear clothes and shoes to buy cattle, so that's my...
Clothes, shoes, and cattle. He was a farmer, but his family, the legacy of his family was a retail clothes chain called M&Co. You remember, you know M&Co, right?
Yep.
M&Co was that's the family that's involved there. So he was part of the family business, but he also was a farmer, and he had his own cattle that he sold before he went off to be a distiller. So absolutely A is what you were looking for there. John Drinks is saying no. Oh dear, I've made a few enemies in the chat tonight. That was tough but fun, says Lucas. 6 out of 10. He's relieved. He's got a pass mark. Hellswood is on a 5 out of 10 pass mark. Bush is saying, oh dear. Bass is on 5 out of 10. Oh well, could be worse, I guess. Jimmy Legg, 5 out of 10. Jimmy Jazz, 5 out of 10. John Drinks is celebrating on a 7 out of 10. Superb. Black Fen, he's on a 4 out of 10. Sorry, my friend. Really sorry. Where's Menno when you want him, says Richard Hall. I know. Menno was here last week. Thoroughly enjoy a Menno quiz. I'm going to approach Menno in the hope that he can maybe come along and do a monthly quiz. I think that would be great fun. Somebody's just joined as an Activity Barfly member. Whiskey No is fantastic. Good to have you as a member. You and all the other Barflies are keeping the vPub ad free. Thanks to your support, it means that I never need to monetize the content on YouTube. Luck left me in the end, says Chris Pollack. Unfortunately, buddy, and looking at it with the benefit of hindsight, and Menno has the same difficulty. You know, it's difficult to pitch whether these quizzes are easy or tricky until you actually run them out to the lounge and see how we get on. Listen, a lot of pass marks tonight. Chris B is saying 0, just like golf, right? Well, yeah, I suppose if you get a 0 in golf, though, it's something to really celebrate, though. So I apologise, Chris. I think, and as I say, in hindsight, it was really quite a tricky. Okawami got an 8 out of 10, and Andrew Butler got 8 out of 10. Now, Andrew, you were complaining, but you still scored an 8, my friend. Superb. Malt Brother Ray and Mikey Hay both on 7. Malt Minion on 6. Colin on 4. Andrew Pearce on 6. Terrific stuff. Mike Beasley saying, oh, geez, 3 out of 10. Sorry, Michael. Sorry, my friend. Jimmy Legacy saying, I'm going to quit my job and take up ironmongery tomorrow, just as soon as I find out what it is. Menno and Sheila's quizzes were easier. Dirty Dog is complaining. Sorry, my friend. And Andrew Pearce is saying, keep them tough. We love it, really. And Mikey Hay is saying, great fun as always. Thanks for what you do, Roy. Thanks for being here, Mikey Hay, and thanks for being so generous with your drams as well. Cheers, Mikey. Ronald is saying easy or difficult, but always fun and informative. That's always the excuse I use as well, Ronald. I appreciate that you're pointing that out. Thanks very much for participating. Cousin Kevin, let's raise a wee glass. Let's raise a wee glass. And honestly, whatever I've said tonight in any of my communications, whether I'm talking about the ones that we love, the ones that are bringing us the value, the ones that we can't turn away from, the Kilchomans, the Springbanks, the Ardnamurchans, and I know that Springbank isn't a new distillery, 1828 is hardly new. But you know, there's a reason that these whiskies are in demand. There's a reasons that they don't hang around for very long. But let's honestly just celebrate the fact that we're in such a wonderful purple patch for whiskey right now that it's just unbelievable, the choice that we have, and the future looks very, very bright. All of the whiskey that's being made right now as we speak is going to be laid down, and at some point in the future we're going to get a chance to enjoy it. So let's raise a wee glass to all of the producers out there, whether you've been around for 200 plus years or whether you've been around for just a wee minute. I wish you all the best of luck. Bring us honesty, integrity, flavour and value. Slant you, Kevin. Cheers.
Thanks, Roy.
Buddy, thanks for stepping up tonight. Thanks for joining me for a wee game of Visit Speyside. Thanks for staying till the quiz. Please stay backstage and we'll raise a wee glass once things have finished, my friend. Good luck with the channel, buddy. I'll drop the link in again once more for you. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy. See you soon.
Terrific stuff. Cousin Kevin's channel is here. I'm not just saying Cousin Kevin. Like I said earlier, he genuinely is my cousin, and he's a pleasure to hang out with and have drams with too. I've had a really nice night tonight exploring new whiskies, and that's what it's all about. It's diversity, it's flavour, it's variety, variations on that flavour, variations on um, their philosophies, their models, their ways of bringing these whiskies to us, but also, unfortunately, variations on what they perceive as a good price for their whiskey. And I think a lot of it is a wee bit north of comfortable, is the poll that I shared with you at the start of tonight's vPub shows. It's not just me that thinks that, it's the community at large. And I think everybody that's making whiskey today would do well to pay a wee bit of attention to that. But we understand that it's a business. We understand. But you have to understand that we are customers and we have choices too. Bas Oosterveld is saying another great vPub. Many thanks. And I look forward to next week. It was nice to have Kev in there too. Slancha Baz, I'm looking forward to sharing with everybody what I've been working on. And now I'm really quite concerned that everybody else, that I've oversold it and everybody's going to be let down next week. Regardless, next week is going to be my intention to share it all with you. In the meantime, I'll raise this glass of Kilchoman 16 and I'll say thank you very, very much to all of you for hanging out with me on another vPub on another Thursday night. And I look very much forward to hanging out with you next Thursday as well, where there will be some form of an announcement. In the meantime, I'll raise this glass and say you're all very dearly loved. Wish you the best of health. Slancha. See you next week. Cheers.